I spent 2 years planning and funding a Europe trip for my parents, only for them to take my unemployed sister instead. Mom grinned. We chose to take your sister because she needed some rest. I remained silent. When they arrived in Europe, they were taken by surprise. As she went out onto the porch and pulled her luggage behind her, my mother exclaimed, "You're late." I looked at my dashboard's clock. The time was 6:02 a.m. I forced a smile and added, "Mom, you're 2 minutes late." My sister Lauren was coming out of the house with her own suitcase in tow as I stepped out of the van to assist with the luggage. My grin went cold. "What's happening?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. My mother turned to face me, her face too happy for the occasion. "Oh, Violet, we agreed that Lauren should attend in your place. She truly needs this trip because she has been under a lot of stress lately." My chest constricted. "Instead of me? I've been preparing this for years, Mom. Everything was paid for by me." She dismissively waved her hand as though I had just brought up a pointless detail. "And we appreciate that, darling, but you put in a lot of effort every day. Later, you can go somewhere else." "Lauren urgently needs this?" Lauren lacked even the grace to appear guilty. She simply shifted her weight onto one hip and grinned. With a tone full of phony appreciation, she responded, "Thanks for understanding, sis." My heart was racing as I gazed at the two of them. After a time, my dad handed me his suitcase and shuffled out, avoiding eye contact. I trembled as I said, "This is unbelievable. I have something to share with you. This was supposed to be our trip." My mother smiled and remarked, "Well, it still is. Instead, just with Lauren. Violet, don't worry about it. Your sister is in dire need of a vacation. I'm Violet, and I've been working extra hours and saving every cent for a trip my parents will never forget for the past 2 years. I organized every aspect, including the final dinner reservation, flights, upscale lodging, and guided tours. But as I saw my sister climb into the back seat of my car in my parents' driveway, I came to the realization that no matter how hard I tried, it didn't matter. This was something I had been dreading for years. Lauren would always come first in their eyes. Biting back the scathing remark that was on the tip of my tongue, I tightened my jaw. I opened the trunk instead, forcing a strained smile. "Then, let's get started," I remarked in a bland voice. Okay, if they decided to put her before me, they could accompany her. I wasn't going to let them have fun though. With the exception of Lauren's constant conversation, the journey to the airport was oppressively quiet. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see the Paris-related TikTok? The prospect of shopping there excites me. Will the excursions take up the entire day, or do you believe we'll have time for that?" I forced myself not to speak as I glanced straight ahead, my hands tightening their grasp on the driving wheel. My mother laughed quietly. "We will have time, of course. When we arrive, we'll work it out." I took a bite out of my cheek. Once we arrive. They didn't even appear to realize that I was no longer a member of that we. My father cleared his throat once. "We appreciate you taking us, Violet. I am aware that this feels strange." I looked in the rearview mirror at him. "Unusual. That's a clever way to phrase it, Dad." He didn't answer. He only shuffled uneasily in his chair, perhaps wishing he had said nothing at all. Lauren's voice was annoying as she leaned forward from the back seat. "You're not angry, are you? I mean, letting me go is incredibly big of you. On my own, I could never have afforded this." I made a tight smile and tightened my jaw. "Lauren, of course, have fun on the journey." My patience was ebbing by the time we arrived at the airport drop-off area. My mother hugged me while I assisted them in unloading their bags. "I appreciate your understanding, my love. This is really important to Lauren and to us." I gave a rigid nod. "Yes, Mom." Wheeling her bag toward the door, Lauren smiled. "Thank you, Violet. You are the greatest." My chest was constricted with hurt and rage as I watched them vanish inside the terminal. It was a blur on the way home. I repeatedly reenacted the exchange in my mind, with each statement having a deeper meaning than the one before. Lauren is really touched by this. "You're not angry, are you? You work so hard all the time." After parking in my driveway, I spent a few minutes sitting in the car and holding onto the steering wheel until my knuckles became white. Then, without hesitation, I strode inside, took out my laptop, and signed into all of the travel accounts I had used to make the reservation. Reservations for a hotel? Cancelled. Tours? Reimbursed. Upgrades on airlines? Lost. The constriction in my chest began to loosen as I gazed at the confirmation emails that were accumulating in my inbox. They wouldn't be staying in 5-star hotels or doing private tours on my pay if they wanted to take Lauren instead of me. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me as I shut down my laptop. In Paris, they could explain themselves to the receptionists. I had had enough of being a doormat. When their plane touched down, the calls began. As I unpacked my suitcase, the one I had meticulously prepared for a trip that was no longer mine, my phone began to vibrate constantly. As I put my shoes back on the rack and hung up my clothes, I couldn't help but notice the irony. The incessant vibration of the humming permeated the entire area. I picked up the phone, looked at the screen, and sighed. It displayed my mother's name along with a number of missed calls and texts. I went through the messages after unlocking the phone. "What's going on, Violet? We are unable to check in at the hotel. There is no reservation. Give me a call now. This isn't humorous, Violet. Take care of this right away." Before I could stop myself, I let out a laugh. Make this right? After what they had done, did they really think I would step in and save the day? Lauren was calling when the phone buzzed once again. She left me a voicemail after I let it ring. With a tone full of entitlement, she yelled, "Violet, this is so petty. You're the reason we're stuck here. Now is the time to call the hotel and have things fixed." Without hearing the remainder, I rolled my eyes and erased the voicemail. I had been their fixer for years, picking up all the slack and smoothing over all the mistakes. No more. I finally made the decision to respond, if only to put an end to the flurry of calls. As soon as I picked it up, my mother's voice hit me like a tidal wave of rage. "What did you do, Violet? None of the tours are currently scheduled, and the hotel claims that the reservation was cancelled." After listening to her tirade for a while, I simply responded, "I cancelled them." After a lengthy moment of astonished silence, she growled, "Why would you do that?" I answered in a sarcastic tone. "Oh, I don't know. Perhaps because you chose to accompany Lauren on my journey. I even drove you to the airport, so you're lucky." "We assumed you would comprehend," she yelled. "Understand?" I said, raising my voice. "Those years of saving and planning didn't matter because Lauren needed a break? That my hard work meant nothing to you? Guess what, Mom? I don't understand, and I don't care to—" Before she could answer, I hung up and threw my phone on the couch, turning it off. The ensuing quiet was lovely, and I felt as though I could breathe again for the first time in a long time. They could manage the rest of the journey without me, but it's okay if they decided to put Lauren first. There was only a day of silence. My phone was ringing with calls and messages once more by the next morning. I ignored them at first. I caught up on work and cleaned the house during the day. But by nightfall, my curiosity overcame me. I grabbed my phone and readied myself for the barrage of texts that would come in. From my mother. "You've gone too far, Violet. Your father is angry, and your sister is crying. None of the hotels you reserved are accessible to us." From Lauren. "You're behaving like a kid. Why you're making such a huge deal out of this is beyond me. Just get things fixed already." And lastly, from my father. "We must speak. This is incorrect." I shook my head and put the phone down. I had been the one making repairs and ensuring everyone was content for years. They were unsure of how to respond now that I had retreated. I sat at the kitchen table, letting my rage boil, and made myself a cup of tea. They have no right to expect me to tidy up their mess. How could they pretend that I was at fault? Minutes later, I took the next call and answered it. "Violet." Before I could speak, my mother yelled. "This is no longer amusing. We're stuck. How embarrassing is this, do you know?" I sipped my tea slowly. "Shameful? Do you find this embarrassing? Imagine saving for years and organizing every aspect of the vacation, only to be informed that you won't even be going. Quit being so dramatic," she yelled. "Lauren was more in need of this than you were," I firmly stated, "and now she can figure it out." "Mom, you made your choice. Okay, so you wanted to take Lauren rather than me. However, don't count on me to pay for her trip. We're related," she growled. "We don't treat one another like this." I laughed resentfully. It's funny, I had the exact same thought. Lauren's whimpering voice could be heard in the background. "Simply hang up on her, Mom. She is acting in an unthinkable manner." That was the last straw. With a cold tone, I said, "Enjoy your trip." "You can't," I said. "Since it's not your journey. I owned it, and now it belongs to no one. Farewell." Before she could answer, I hung up and shut off my phone once more. For the remainder of the evening, I experienced a strange mixture of relief and rage, relief that I had finally defended myself, and fury that they had placed me in this predicament. All they wanted to do was label me dramatic. I wasn't allowing people to take advantage of me for the first time in my life. The days that followed were gloriously peaceful. I was finally able to concentrate straight without being distracted by guilt trips and accusations when I turned off my phone. I sipped coffee on my back porch in the mornings and relished the peace I had long sought. My afternoons were spent working and finishing small tasks that I had been putting off, which served as a reminder of my abilities when I wasn't constrained by their never-ending demands. My curiosity overcame me by the third day. There were more than a dozen voicemails waiting for me when I turned my phone back on. My mother sent the first several messages, becoming more and more frantic with each one. "You must give me a call back immediately, Violet. This has gotten out of hand. It's unbelievable that you're doing this. We are humiliated by you. How could you treat us like this when we are your parents?" Lauren's communications then arrived, replete with the arrogant tone she had usually employed. "This is quite trivial, even for you. Everything is being ruined by you. Violet, just repair it." My dad's voice finally emerged, a little softer but no less sharp. "I don't know what happened to you, Violet. Give us a call back so we can resolve this." After a moment of hesitation, I listened to my mother's lengthy final message. This time, she spoke more quietly and with a hint of annoyance and weariness. "We're back at the airport now, Violet," she said. "I hope you are pleased with yourself, but the trip is spoiled. Your father and I are, well, disappointed doesn't even come close to describing how upset your sister is. When you're ready to speak, give us a call." Without responding, I erased the voicemails. To be honest, I wasn't prepared to speak and wasn't sure if I ever would be. This was the result of years of them prioritizing Lauren and expecting me to smile in acceptance. It wasn't a one-time error. As the hours went by, I couldn't help but think back on all the occasions I'd been ignored or disregarded, every family get-together where Lauren's whims controlled the schedule, every holiday when my achievements were viewed as an afterthought. Although the fissures had been developing for years, this trip had been the tipping point. Grace dropped by unexpectedly that night with 2 cups of coffee and a curious expression on her face. She placed the coffee on the table and remarked, "I heard about what happened. Your mother gave me a call yesterday." She had, of course. When my mother attempted to coerce me into complying, she had always been skilled at finding allies. "And?" I took a sip and inquired. A wicked smile crept onto Grace's face as she shrugged. "I informed her that you were most likely busy and would contact her again when you had time." I shook my head and laughed. "You are the greatest." "No, because you finally stood up for yourself. You're the best," she remarked in a suddenly serious tone. "Violet, I understand how difficult that is. Don't allow them to get you down again." Long after she was gone, her words remained with me. Grace was correct. I had put in too much effort to please individuals who never seemed to appreciate what I had done. It was time to permanently end that cycle. I experienced an odd feeling of clarity by the time the weekend arrived. Freedom, which I hadn't experienced in years, joined the rage that was still bubbling beneath the surface. Freedom from their never-ending demands. Freedom from fixing things for the family. Freedom to live my life as I see fit. However, the silence was short-lived, as anticipated. When I eventually received a call on a Sunday afternoon, I chose to answer it. My dad did it this time. With a tired tone, he said, "Violet, your mom wanted me to call. She believes you will pay attention to me." I said, reclining in my chair. "Go on." He sighed. "Look, everything has gotten out of control. Lauren is angry, your mom is outraged, and, well, it's a complete disaster. However, you are superior to this." I tensed up as his comments sparked a new round of rage. "Dad, better than what? Defending myself? Refusing to let you trample me once more?" "I didn't mean that," he added hastily. "You've always been the sensible one, that's all. The one who maintains order." "This isn't like you," I said, making a brief, sour laugh. "You're right, it's not like me, because I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess." When he hesitated, I briefly believed he would finally understand my point of view. However, he subsequently stated, "You're punishing the whole family over one decision. Is that really fair?" "Fair?" I asked again, raising my voice. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned? Was it fair when you replaced me with Lauren, like I didn't matter?" He said, "That's not what we were trying to do," in a defensive tone. "We just thought Lauren needed it more." I yelled, "Of course you did. You always think she needs more attention, more support, more of everything. And I'm always the one expected to sacrifice for her. Not anymore." It was so quiet on the other end of the line. At last, he stated, "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't need you to say anything," I said in a steady voice. "I just need you to understand that I'm done being the afterthought. From now on, I come first. Goodbye, Dad. With shaking hands, I hung up and put the phone down. I allowed myself to feel everything for the remainder of the day, including relief, grief, and rage. Although it wasn't simple, it felt like a fresh beginning. I was no longer and never would be the family's fixer. They were capable of resolving their own mess. I was waiting for my parents and Lauren at their place when they eventually came back. I'd parked in their driveway, sipping coffee and feeling surprisingly calm as I watched their taxi pull up. As they stepped out, dragging their suitcases behind them, their faces were a mix of exhaustion and irritation. Lauren was the first to speak. "Well, I hope you're happy, Violet." I raised an eyebrow, staying seated on the porch swing. "Happy about what?" "Our trip was a disaster," my mom snapped, waving her hand as if to brush the whole thing away. "We spent the entire week staying in dingy hotels and eating terrible food because we couldn't afford anything decent. And don't get me started on the tours." Lauren chimed in, crossing her arms. "Oh wait, there weren't any? Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up and be told there was no reservation?" I took another sip of coffee, letting their frustrations wash over me. "Sounds rough," I answered finally, my voice cool. "But you wanted to take Lauren, remember? I'm sure you all had some great bonding time." "That's not the point," my mom shot out, her voice rising. "You knew we couldn't afford all the things you'd planned. You set us up to fail." I stood up, setting my drink down on the tiny table next to me. "No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip for the three of us, something special I'd been saving for years. You're the ones who decided to cut me out at the last second." When my father did speak, it was in a lower but no less accusing tone. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme." With my arms folded, I questioned. "Was it? Why should I have paid for a trip I wasn't even invited to? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have planned it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel the return flight." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. It's just money, Violet." "And you're so entitled," I retorted, at last losing patience. "Or do you just think that because someone else handles it, things automatically happen for you? Do you have any idea how much work and sacrifice went into planning that trip?" For a time, they stood stunned into silence. With a steady yet forceful voice, I went on. "I've spent years being the responsible one, the one who fixes things, plans things, and makes sure everything runs smoothly. Additionally, you've taken everything for granted for an equal amount of time." My mother began to say, "That's not fair." But I interrupted her by raising a hand. "No, Mother. The way you treated me is unfair. I decided to stop being your doormat because, as usual, you picked Lauren over me. Did you not want me to go? All right. However, without me, you are unable to reap the rewards of my labors." I turned to go after grabbing my luggage from the porch swing. "I'm happy you made it back safely, but don't count on things to return to normal. I'm finished." They called after me as I was making my way to my car, their words a mixture of shame and rage, but I didn't turn around. Every visit from my parents' place had left me emotionally spent for years, but this time I felt lighter after saying all I'd been holding in and, for once, not worrying about their reaction. The trip home was oddly serene. I prepared a cup of tea when I came home and sat on the couch, mentally reliving the encounter. They had been so confident that I would give in, as I always do, but seeing their shocked expressions as I left served as a reminder of how much I had changed. I was done spending my life to satisfy their expectations, therefore it didn't matter if they were upset, offended, or ashamed. Grace called me the following day. "How did it go?" Without making an effort to be polite, she inquired. I leaned back against the kitchen counter and chuckled. "Just as you would expect. Lauren is sulking, they are enraged, and Mom is presumably attempting to find a way to guilt me back into compliance." Grace gave a little snort. "Give her a chance. Now that you have a backbone, I'm here to make sure it remains in place." I smiled, appreciating her steadfast assistance. "Grace, thank you. I mean it. Throughout everything, you have been my pillar of support." "Anytime," she continued, her tone softening. "So, now that you're not playing family fixer anymore, what's next for you?" Since the encounter, I had been wondering what would happen next. I had spent years trying to win my family's approval and pleasing them, so now that I was free of that weight, the options felt limitless, and a bit scary. I said, "I don't know yet, but I feel like I have the final say. No one else, not even them. Only me." I heard Grace say, "Sounds like the start of something amazing," and her smile was audible. Over the course of the following few weeks, I began making little adjustments that felt significant in their own right. I redecorated my living room, replacing my parents' hand-me-down furniture with pieces that felt particularly mine, and I spent weekends visiting nearby parks and cafes, things I had always wanted to do but had never had time for. I began journaling, putting down my ideas and dreams without considering what other people would think of them. Every little step felt like regaining a piece of myself that I had been unaware I had lost. As the cancelled reservations looked back at me one evening when I sat down with my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I had used to organize the trip, I felt a wave of resolve rather than regret. I wasn't going to waste that money, which had been intended for a once-in-a-lifetime event, so I closed the spreadsheet, opened a new tab in my browser, and searched solo travel ideas. It wasn't the same itinerary I'd planned for them, and it wasn't about making a statement anymore. Instead, it was for me, a chance to celebrate my independence and finally put myself first, when I scheduled a solo trip to Italy a few weeks following my parents' return. I had never traveled alone before, so I was both excited and anxious when I landed in Rome. However, as soon as I left the airport and entered the busy city, I knew I had made the right choice. There was no schedule, no one else to think about, just me and the freedom to do exactly what I wanted. I spent my days exploring cobblestone alleyways, marveling at ancient ruins, and enjoying meals at quaint tiny cafes. I took out my journal, which I had carried with me, one afternoon while enjoying a gelato. I had been writing about my goals for years, but they were usually entwined with making other people happy. As I was writing, the emphasis changed. Acquire a new language. Launch a modest company. Visit a minimum of 5 other nations. As the list expanded, each objective reflected the life I wished to lead rather than the one that had been expected of me. As I ate supper at a small, family-run restaurant with a view of the Arno River on my last night in Florence, I was struck with a profound sense of tranquility as I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. I'd spent so much of my life trying to get my family's favor, but here, thousands of miles away, I realized something crucial. I didn't need it. I was enough, just the way I was. This trip had been more than just a vacation. It was a turning point. My parents made another attempt to contact me after I got home, using more tactful language and well-crafted texts. One of my mom's texts said, "I hope you had a good trip. Perhaps we can all talk soon." I put down my phone after staring at the message for a while, deciding that this time it would be on my terms and that I wasn't ready to respond. I felt proud as I put trinkets on my shelf and unloaded my suitcase. My mom called me a week after I got back from my vacation, and I picked it up this time. "Hello, Violet," she said in a tone that was surprisingly gentle. "How was your journey?" "It was amazing," I answered in a bland tone. "That's excellent to hear," she continued, hesitating as though she was trying to find the proper words. "And we have been reflecting on what happened a lot. Perhaps we did not handle things well." Although I was taken aback by the admission, I wasn't yet prepared to forgive her. "Wrongly. Without even asking, you took my spot on a trip that I organized and paid for." "That's an understatement," she whispered. "I know. Your dad and we were unaware of how deeply it would harm you." "What about Lauren? Is she still blaming me for spoiling her vacation, or does she feel bad too?" I inquired. "She's upset," she said. "But I think she knows now she could have handled things better." I leaned on the counter and sighed. "This was more than just the vacation, Mom. It has to do with years of prioritizing her and expecting me to make up the difference. I've stopped doing it." She paused before responding. "I get that. We will make an effort to perform better. We'd rather not lose you." I had learned enough to not let guilt control my decisions, even if her remarks struck a deep chord with me. I answered, "I'm happy to hear that, but fixing this will require more than just words. Real effort, not just excuses, is what I need to see." "You will," she stated. "We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday." As I sat down with my journal that evening, I recognized something crucial. Whether or not they changed was not my duty. After the call, I felt a range of feelings, including satisfaction that they were finally admitting their behavior and skepticism about whether they would truly change. I maintained my boundaries throughout the next few months, answering their calls and texts when I felt like it, but I didn't make an effort to make amends or diffuse arguments. Instead, I concentrated on creating the life I desired. Every step I took felt like regaining another aspect of myself, so I joined a local hiking group, took a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for, and even began organizing my next solo trip. I skipped the family cruise, and my parents went crazy because they treat me poorly and idolize my brother. I'm not even sure when it began, but I felt like my brother Adam and I belonged to 2 different households. Perhaps I first became aware of the obvious difference in how we were treated in high school. Adam had been found to be a drug dealer. My parents said it wasn't a huge thing, just a difficult time he was going through. However, after I was found smoking marijuana, it seemed as though I had set the home on fire. My mind was racing as my parents, Richard and Beth, threatened to expel me. My parents would give Adam a blanket and claim he was merely experimenting, but I recognized then that Adam might set the world on fire. Me? They would contact the fire department and I could light a match. This disparity simply widened over time. Adam, frequently referred to as the golden child, left college 3 times. My parents dismissed it as inconsequential each time. He's still finding himself, they would say. In the meantime, they chastised me for not trying hard enough, and I graduated from college a semester late. My achievements never seemed sufficient. I got my first serious work as a technical writer by the time I was 22 in 2020. I was really pleased with myself. However, that moment was short-lived. I was immediately removed from my parents' health insurance. They cut me off entirely as a kind of reward for my independence, proof that I could manage alone. Adam, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until last year, when he turned 26. I had to stand on my own 2 feet for 4 more years, whether I was ready or not, while still being treated like a child. The imbalance grew unavoidable over time. Adam continued to reside in Colorado, the state where he had left college. My parents paid him money for basics, bills, and rent even though he didn't work or attend school. With this assistance, what did he do? Yes, he purchased a $22,000 dog for himself. I recall listening to my parents rave about Adam's new German Shepherd, Max, as I sat in my tiny apartment making a grocery budget. The worst of it was when I was fired in early 2023 at the age of 24. Due to the company's downsizing, I was no longer able to afford rent. I was forced to return to Oklahoma City, my hometown. My parents made me feel much more like a failure than I already did. I found a new position in May 2023 after months of looking for work. They surprised me by claiming I owed them $10,000 in unpaid rent on the day I happily informed them of my new job. Yes, you read correctly, $10,000. When I moved in, we hadn't even talked about rent. My parents agreed to let me stay till I recovered. I helped out where I could by doing freelance work and contributing to groceries. But all of a sudden, they determined that I owed them for each month that I had been there. I was aware that resisting would just exacerbate the situation. Confrontation was never well received by Beth or Richard. I made the payment. I worked really hard, saved as much money as I could, and paid them off by September 2023, right before I moved in with my lover Tom. The problem with my parents is that, even after Adam depleted their finances for his unsuccessful college attempts, they never asked for anything from him. But me? They were prepared to take advantage of me as soon as I had a steady job. I still hear my mother say, "We're just motivating you to be independent, Sarah." I wanted to yell, I was self-sufficient already. I had been all along. The cruise was the last straw. My parents revealed their ambitious idea for a family trip in late September. They suggested it would be a lovely, week-long Thanksgiving vacation, a cruise. I recall how my mother's face brightened as she talked about how much fun we would have and how wonderful it would be if Adam and his girlfriend Laura could come. "Since you have a good job now, you can buy your own ticket," she added after giving me a quick glance. I was hit hard by the remarks. I was taken aback. "Wait, you're paying for everyone else but not me?" I responded. My mom rehearsed the statement. "Adam's still finding his way. And Laura's family isn't well off. You can afford it, Sarah. It's not like you'd need a fancy room anyway." As if I should be thankful for simply being on the boat, crammed into a windowless cabin like an afterthought, they rationalized, "Not a fancy room." I wished to draw attention to the hypocrisy. Why was Adam receiving a suite if the rooms weren't important? If he was still finding himself at almost 30, why wasn't he paying his own expenses? I, of course, argued. I could afford the ticket, so it wasn't about the money. It has to do with justice. But when it comes to Adam, there is no such thing as fairness in my family. "Green isn't a good look on you, Sarah," my mother replied, shaking her head. "Green? Jealousy? More than anything, I detest that word. They always use it as an excuse, as if my annoyance is unjustified and my emotions are unworthy simply because I don't accept their obvious partiality." That evening, I left their home in a rage. Tom, who has always been there for me, advised me not to go. "You don't owe them this," he stated. I agreed with him for the first time. I decided that I was not going. There was silence in the weeks before Thanksgiving. I always change my mind, so my parents believed I would too. They believe I'm too terrified to upset the status quo and too weak to confront them. I let them believe it this time, though. I didn't let them know I wouldn't be attending. As they confirmed their plans, made hotel reservations, and discussed all of the excursions they would be going on. I remained silent. They didn't text me until the evening before the trip. Be here by 8 a.m., so we can drive to New Orleans. Don't be late, wrote my dad. With my chest constricted, I gazed at the message. I then replied as follows. Since you didn't think I was worth the effort to include, I'll be spending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child. I then turned off the group chat. I felt powerful for the first time in years, as like I was choosing myself above their unachievable demands. I accepted the invitation from Tom's family to spend Thanksgiving at their cabin in Arkansas. I owed my parents nothing, not my money, not my time, and definitely not an apology. Tom grinned and gave me a forehead kiss when I informed him about the text. When he said, "Good for you," I wish I could describe how fantastic it felt. It didn't, at least not yet. Even when you know you're right, there's something about confronting your parents that makes you feel uneasy. However, I had had enough of being their afterthought. I had had enough of second place. There was silence in my flat on the morning of the cruise. Like the quiet before a storm, an odd silence descended upon everything. I stared at my muted phone while sipping my coffee. I knew they would begin messaging me shortly to inquire about my whereabouts and to remind me that the car was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. My dad calling to inquire whether I needed gas money for the drive was something I partially expected. My phone vibrated on the counter at 8:15. As I let it buzz, I saw it glow against the rock like a firefly. Where are you? It's past 8. We're waiting. I saw my mother looking at the clock and shaking her head, and I could almost hear her sigh of impatience. My dad had joined in by 8:30, using his typical direct tone. Sarah, we are leaving for the port in 10 minutes. You need to hurry up. I had been rushing to fulfill their expectations, which weren't the same for Adam, for years. I could see my brother, half sleeping in the back seat of the car, laughing and cheerful. He most likely didn't even realize or give a damn that I wasn't coming. Rubbing his eyes from sleep, Tom entered the kitchen. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, he inquired, "They text you yet?" When I answered, "Of course they did. They'll figure it out soon enough." He gave me the look that indicated, "I know this is difficult, but I'm proud of you." It was too. Despite my desire to feel victorious, I was unable to do so. I felt as though a brick had been placed against my heart. I asked abruptly, "Do you think I'm being petty?" Tom took a seat across from me and spoke in a steady, calm tone. "Sarah, they made this choice. You're just showing them what it feels like to be left out. But they're my parents. I shouldn't." Tom put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. "Your parents treat Adam like he walks on water and act like you're a burden. You've bent over backward for them your whole life. You are not being petty, you're setting a boundary." Despite the fact that my stomach ached, I nodded. Their texts became increasingly desperate as the group chat began to hum once more. At last, I grabbed my phone, typed one message, and pressed send. "Since you didn't put in the effort to include me, I will be attending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child." I then placed the phone face down on the table and muted the conversation. Tom gave a small smile. "You're allowed to put yourself first, Sarah." All I could hope was that it would begin to feel that way. We prepared Tom's vehicle for the trip to his family's cabin that afternoon. Months before, almost as an afterthought, his mother, Linda, had extended an invitation to me. She had called and said, "We'd love to have you join us for Thanksgiving if you're free." I dismissed it at the moment, thinking I would be with my own family. Now it seemed weird, like if the cosmos had known all along. My chest started to relax as we made our way toward the cabin along winding back roads. The naked trees of late November stretched out like bony fingers toward the pale sky as the surrounding area opened up around us. I allowed the silence to envelop me like a blanket as I gazed out the window. After some time, Tom said, "Are you okay?" "I will be," I muttered. I wanted it to be true, but I wasn't sure whether it was. We were warmly received by Tom's family. His mother waved and smiled broadly as soon as we drew into the driveway and came out onto the porch. Like a cozy fire on a chilly night, Linda was one of those people who instantly put you at rest. "I'm so glad you're here, Sarah," she said as she came down the stairs to give me a hug. I returned her hug with a smile. "Thank you for having me." "Of course. We're thrilled to have you join us. Tom, grab her bags and get inside before you both freeze." The aroma of freshly baked pies and roasting turkey filled the cabin like a warm remembrance. While Tom's younger relatives raced around the living room, Tom's father, Paul, was in the kitchen basting the turkey. I couldn't recall the last time I had entered a family get-together and felt accepted and included. With a kind grin, Linda gave me a glass of wine. Your family here, Sarah. Relax and enjoy yourself. Even though it was the most straightforward thing, I almost started crying. Tom and I got up early the following day, Thanksgiving morning, to assist with the preparations. While she and Paul worked on the food, his mother assigned us to arrange the table. The clatter of dishes, music, and laughter filled the place with vitality. Like a scene from a movie I'd always wanted to be in, it was crazy in the greatest way. I smiled as I watched Tom fold napkins into tidy triangles. What? He smiled at me and inquired. Nothing, I replied. It's just nice being here. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. You deserve this, Sarah. We went outdoors to play cornhole with Tom's cousins after supper. Naturally, I was awful. My aim was as precise as a kid throwing darts while wearing a blindfold. However, no one gave a damn. Tom burst out laughing as I missed the board entirely for the third time. He put an arm around my shoulder and teasingly said, "You're hopeless." "I'm trying my best," I answered, sharing his laughter. From across the yard, his cousin Ellie, who couldn't have been older than 12, spoke up. "You're doing great, Sarah. My mom says it's about having fun, not winning." I grinned. "I'll take it." We gathered around the fire pit that night, drinking hot cocoa while covered in blankets. Linda distributed marshmallows to be roasted. I felt calmer than I have in years as I watched the flames dance before me. I was treated like a member of Tom's family. No one made me feel alienated or asked me where I belonged. I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone for once. Linda smiled softly at me as we sat gazing at the flickering embers toward the end of the night. "Sarah, I know this is ultimately up to Tom, but I hope you'll join our family for real someday." I was taken aback by what she said, and my cheeks began to blush. I muttered, "I would be honored, then." I meant it too. I felt lighter than I had in a long time as I laid in bed with Tom that night and looked up at the ceiling. Whispering, "Thank you for bringing me here." Tom turned over on his side and gave me a look. "You're welcome. But you don't have to thank me, Sarah. You belong here." His words sank in like rain after a drought, and I blinked back tears. This was where I belonged. I didn't have to plead for morsels of affection or struggle for a seat at the table. As I was sufficient. I felt free for the first time in my life. The Saturday following Thanksgiving, I felt lighter than I had in months when I woke up. With laughter, food, warmth, and no expectations other than simply being there, Tom's family made things seem so easy. You don't have to earn that kind of love, and I didn't understand how hungry I was for it. It was a quiet drive back to Dallas. As we discussed everything and nothing, including our plans for Christmas, future hikes, and how awful I was at cornhole, the trees outside became hazy striations of brown and yellow. Over the course of those few hours, I laughed more than I had all year. However, such lightness was short-lived. I finally picked up my phone when we returned to my place. I nearly felt bad about turning it back on after not checking it all weekend. With dozens of unread messages, pictures, and even a few missed calls, the group chat had blown up. As the screen filled with notifications, I gazed at it. There were photos from the cruise. One of my parents, smiling and sunburned, drinking, another of Adam and Laura on the ship's deck, with the ocean behind them like an infinite blue dream. Then the texts arrived. "Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places." In those remarks, I could practically hear my dad's voice, composed, measured, and tinged with a hint of judgment. He never used the exact words, but it was the kind of message that made me feel bad. As I continued to scroll, I came across a text from my mother. "You should have been there. I hope you realize what you missed out on." What did I miss? I pondered. But what did they miss? What about how they treated me as though I wasn't important enough to start with? I read the text again and again while sitting on the edge of the couch, my cheeks flushed. Tom saw right away. He put his arm around my shoulders and sat down next to me. What did they say? To let him see, I held out the phone. Silently. "Same old story," I muttered. I should feel bad for missing out, not the other way around. Tom let out a sigh. "You don't have to justify your choices to them, Sarah." I answered. "I know, but I didn't feel like I knew anything." My mom's name appeared on my phone a few minutes later. A tiny part of me that still yearned for their acceptance picked up the phone when I considered ignoring it. She said, "Where were you?" right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. "I told you," I said, attempting to sound steady. "I spent the holiday with Tom's family." "You could have told us sooner, Sarah," she replied. "Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up?" I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket, you didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent. You don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. With my entire body trembling, I buried my face in my hands. Immediately, Tom was there, sitting beside me and embracing me. It's okay, he muttered. You're okay. However, I didn't feel well. No matter how many times Tom assured me that I was sufficient, I knew that my parents would never be able to fill the void in my heart. Tom and I shared a pint of ice cream on the couch for the remainder of the evening. In an attempt to escape the weight of it all, we watched old films. Even though the tears were still threatening to come back, I allowed myself to laugh when Tom cited the corny dialogue. I felt empty by the time I went to bed. I got up early for work the following morning. There was silence on my phone. Don't text. No calls were missed. In some ways, my parents' silence was worse than their rage. They seemed to be waiting for me to say I was sorry and that I had overreacted, as I often had in the past. But I wasn't going to this time. I immersed myself in my job, utilizing the diversion to prevent myself from reflecting on everything that had transpired. I sent emails, revised technical manuals, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When my coworkers inquired about my Thanksgiving, I consistently responded with the same response. It was nice, I spent it with Tom's family. I kept the argument with my parents a secret from them. I kept the pictures, the texts, and the phone call that left me sobbing on the couch a secret from them. In actuality, I was ashamed. Shame that after everything they had done to me, I still desperately craved their acceptance. Tom and I sat on my apartment's balcony that evening and watched the distant blinking city lights. At last, I said, I don't know why it's so hard. Because they're your parents, Tom said. You want them to love you the way you deserve. That's not a bad thing, Sarah. I muttered. But what if they never will? After a period of silence, Tom said, then maybe you have to stop asking for it. I knew he was right, so his comments were like a kick to the belly. I had begged for something my parents couldn't provide me with all my life. Perhaps it was time to give up. However, I wasn't yet prepared. My mother texted me when I woke up the following morning. We need to talk before Christmas. Let us know when you're free. I placed my phone down after staring at the message for a while. Christmas. That meant something to me. They didn't want the rest of the family to know why I wasn't there. They would want me to act like nothing had occurred, play nice, and smile for photos. However, I wasn't sure if I could still do it. I didn't anticipate how much the weeks before Christmas would weigh on me. Like a burden I couldn't release, my mom's text about having to talk hung in the back of my mind. At first, I thought they would just disregard it. However, I was acquainted with my parents. They weren't the type to tolerate unresolved conflict, particularly if it meant looking foolish in front of the other family members. I still hadn't responded by the middle of December, and the messages began to come in once more. My dad joined in this time. We can't just leave things like this, Sarah. Family means something. Let us know when we can talk. Family means something. I sat with those words for a long time, mentally reciting them over and over again. How did they define family? She said, where were you? Right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. I told you, I said, attempting to sound steady. I spent the holiday with Tom's family. You could have told us sooner, Sarah, she replied. Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up? I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, You told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent, you don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. Tom discovered me sitting at the table with my head in my hands in the kitchen that evening. I had been mentally going over the exchange with my mother over and again, analyzing each word, tone, and pause. Tom gently pulled out a chair to sit across from me and asked, What happened? They want me to come for Christmas, I replied. She didn't apologize though, not really. It's like they don't even understand what they've done. With a groan, Tom reached for my hand. Do you want to go? I gave a headshake. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to, it's Christmas. I don't want to lose my whole family, but it hurts to keep pretending nothing's wrong, he concluded for me. Yeah, I muttered. Tom gave me a handshake. Then don't go, Sarah. You don't have to keep putting yourself in situations that hurt you. But if I don't go, they'll tell everyone I'm being selfish, I replied. They'll make it sound like I'm the problem. My mom knows how to twist things so it looks like I'm the bad guy. Tom remained silent for a while, as if he was attempting to find the proper words. Then he stated, It doesn't matter what they tell other people. You know the truth. I could feel the pressure building as Christmas drew near. My mother contacted me twice more and left identical-sounding voicemails. She desired to make things more amicable. She desired the family's unity. She wished for me to let go of the past. I didn't return her call. My dad eventually sent a message the day before Christmas Eve. This has gone on long enough, Sarah. You're coming to Christmas. We'll talk it out like adults, and then we'll move forward. It was an order, not a request. Before I erased the message, I looked at it for a while. Tom and I packed the car and headed back to his parents' property on Christmas Day. As if she had been waiting for us all morning, Linda welcomed us with a platter of cookies and a loving embrace. Squeezing my arm, she added, I'm so glad you're here. I grinned, but my eyes didn't see it. I knew my parents would spend the day acting like everything was fine, but the truth was that I felt bad, guilty for not being with them. I pictured them at the dinner table, with my mom passing around the mashed potatoes and Adam giggling at something. I pondered whether they would inform everyone that I was too busy to go or that I was simply being challenging once more. I must have been deep in thought when Tom bent over and said in a whisper, Hey, you don't have to feel bad about choosing yourself. I know, I muttered. His family and I sat by the fire that afternoon and opened gifts. Tom's father gave me a mug that read, You're part of the family, whether you like it or not. And Linda gave me a knitted scarf that was the softest thing I had ever felt. I almost started crying, but everyone laughed. I now understood what Christmas could be like for the first time in my life, cozy, stress-free, and effortless. No one was being cautious, no one was keeping score. It was love, pure and unreserved. I grinned as I turned to face Tom. Perhaps this was how family was meant to feel. For once, I didn't feel like I was stepping on a minefield as Christmas went by in silence. There were no harsh words, tight smiles, or passive-aggressive remarks to spoil the occasion, and Tom's family made the holiday feel effortless. After holding my breath for too long, I felt calm when I woke up the following morning, as though I had finally figured out what it meant to release it. However, that tranquility was short-lived. After 2 days, I turned my phone back on and discovered just what I had anticipated. Texts, voicemails, and missed calls. My absence had not gone overlooked, and my family had spent the holiday together. Late on Christmas night, my mother sent a message. We missed you today, Sarah. Your absence really hurt your father. That was it. There were no explanations, no attempt to find out why I had avoided them, and no expression of regret for how they had made me feel so inferior. Rather, the responsibility had returned to me. The issue was me. They had been harmed by me. My parents seemed to live in a whole separate reality, where my emotions were non-existent unless they caused annoyance to another else. The shame hung like smoke in the back of my mind, but I chose to disregard the message and resume my life. A part of me knew that the decision I had taken was the right one. Why, though, did everything still feel so off? A few days later, Tom and I were watching a movie when my phone called. It was Adam, my brother. I hesitated when I saw his name on the screen. Adam didn't call me very much. He preferred to keep his hands clean and avoided getting involved in any arguments with our parents most of the time. Quietly, I asked Tom, "Should I answer it?" His words, "It's up to you," came as he squeezed my hand. After a moment of hesitation, I swiped the screen. "Hello? Sarah," Adam remarked in a cool, clipped voice. "What the hell happened?" I let out a sigh. "What do you mean?" "I mean Christmas," he continued, his voice beginning to grow irritated. "Mom and Dad were a wreck. They said you just ignored them and ruined the holiday." I saw my jaw getting tense. "I didn't ruin anything, Adam. I chose not to come because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter." Adam exhaled heavily, the way he always did when he felt I was being tough. "Why do you have to make everything a big deal, Sarah? They're trying their best." "No, they're not," I remarked sharply. "Adam, they treat you like you're perfect. They pay for everything you need and never expect you to stand on your own. Meanwhile, I get $10,000 in rent thrown at me the second I get a new job. Do you not see how unfair that is?" Adam's comments, "You're just jealous," were as recognizable as an old scar. "You always have been." Again, that word. Jealous. As if my desire for justice made me the bad guy. With my voice trembling, I tightened my hold on the phone. "I'm not jealous, Adam. I'm exhausted. You get to make mistakes and get help. I don't. I have to be perfect just to earn the bare minimum, and I'm tired of it. Maybe if you stopped acting like a victim, they'd treat you differently." Adam replied bluntly. I thought he had slapped me. I was momentarily unable to even reply. That one sentence seemed to crush every shred of hope I had ever had for my brother. He was unable to comprehend. He didn't. I was the issue for him. It was me who created the commotion. At that moment, I understood that I had been mistaken to believe that Adam may one day see things for what they truly were. I replied softly, "Goodbye, Adam," and hung up before he could answer. I hid my face in my hands and placed the phone on the table. Even though I didn't want to cry, I did. Without a word, Tom grabbed me into his arms and let me express everything. "He doesn't get it," I muttered after some time. "He never will." "I know," Tom said. "But that's not your fault, Sarah." I couldn't stop thinking about that phone talk with Adam in the days that followed. I repeatedly rehearsed his remarks in my mind in the hopes that they might lessen the pain. However, they didn't. I reflected on how close we had been as children. Adam was my hero back then. He stayed up late playing video games with me and taught me how to ride a bike. When I was being teased at school, he was the one who defended me. I had believed that Adam was the only one who truly understood me. However, things had changed at some point. Adam had been more than glad to take the perks my parents gave him without question, and their partiality had caused a rift between us. I wanted to think he still secretly cared for me. In actuality, though, he had sided with them. Perhaps he didn't think so. Perhaps he believed he was merely maintaining harmony. However, it seemed like a betrayal to me. Although I wasn't convinced that version of my brother still existed, I still missed him. Tom and I observed the city lights one evening while sitting on the balcony, covered with blankets. After a hard day, the crisp but chilly air felt rejuvenating, like a reset button. "I've been thinking," I muttered. "About what?" Tom asked me as he turned to face me. "About cutting contact with them," I replied. Speaking the words aloud felt liberating, but they also felt heavy. "I mean, not completely. Not yet. But maybe I need to put some real distance between us. I need a break from all of this." Tom gave a nod. "You don't have to explain it to me, Sarah. I think it's the right move." The words, I feel guilty," I said. "They're still my family. And if I walk away, they'll tell everyone I'm the problem. I don't want to lose the rest of my family too." Tom grabbed my hand as he reached over. "Sarah, you can't control what they say about you. You can't change the way they see things. But you don't deserve to keep putting yourself through this just to make them happy." I took a deep breath while gazing at the skyline. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it." "You are," Tom asserted decisively, You've been strong your whole life, Sarah. But this time, you're being strong for yourself. That's different. I listened to what he had to say. Perhaps he was correct. I had spent years trying to prove myself to my parents and going out of my way to get their love and acceptance. But it was never enough, no matter how hard I tried. Perhaps it was time to give up. Perhaps I should have chosen myself instead. I took a seat that evening and composed a letter to my parents. Mom, Dad, for a while, I need some space. I love you both, but I can't keep acting like everything is all right when it's not. I'm sick of being compared to Adam and feeling unimportant. I need time to decide what kind of relationship I want with you, so I need to take a break until then. I hope you understand. Before I pushed submit, I looked at the message for a long time. I experienced a peculiar sensation of relief when I eventually did, as if I had finally let go of something I had been clinging to for too long. With his hand on my knee, Tom sat next to me. How do you feel? Scared, was my honest response. But also, lighter. He smiled as he remarked, that's a good start. And I believed him for the first time in years. My stepmother and father are leaving me alone and going on a honeymoon with their daughters, so I made sure they don't come back into my house. She died of a stroke last year at the age of 47, leaving me this house as an inheritance. Although it came as a shock, I've come to terms with it. My parents shared custody of me after divorcing when I was 7 years old. I was with my mom for half the month and my dad for the other half. I must admit that because my mother understood me, we were closer. My 50-year-old father was always a little too busy for me. I received the impression that he was more focused on his work and ladies than he was on me. He didn't seem to prioritize me, but as long as I had my mother, I didn't mind. My dad made the decision to relocate to Houston for work a few years ago, shortly after I turned 18 and enrolled in college. We only met around the holidays and began to see each other less frequently. He joined us in celebrating Christmas 2 years ago with his then-girlfriend, 38-year-old Julia. She also brought her 2 daughters from her former relationship with her high school sweetheart, who are 16 and 18 years old. Before she began dating my dad, they had broken up for almost 7 years but had never been married. My dad had never brought a girlfriend to family gatherings, so we were taken aback. Nevertheless, we made every effort to make Julia and her girls feel at home and welcome them as warmly as possible. We all seemed to get along well at the time, and it was a very lovely evening. Even after that, Julia would always greet me when I called my dad, and she was really kind to me. Her daughters tended to keep to themselves because they were a little shy and introverted. Our relationship was nice overall. I learned that my mother left me the house after she died. Luckily, my mother always loved to plan ahead, especially in serious instances like these, so she distributed all of her assets in her will around the time I turned 18. I made the decision to move in and look for a job that wouldn't require me to relocate anytime soon because I had recently finished. I was comfortable in my childhood house, so I wanted to stay there for the next few years. After learning about the will, my dad made sure I knew that he wasn't pleased with my mom's choice. My dad was a little depressed when he realized he wouldn't be getting the house back, but he and Julia had been quite kind and encouraging at the funeral. My mom took over this house during the divorce, but my parents purchased it together when they first got married. Even though my mom sacrificed her job to stay at home and raise me so my dad could concentrate on his business, it was a fair arrangement because he got away with not paying alimony. In my opinion, it was entirely reasonable to keep the house in the settlement and release my dad from alimony. With some assistance from her parents, my mom recovered later, and she even made sure I never felt ignored or unimportant. She was good at both jobs. My dad was furious about not getting the house back, but I didn't mind. Although he didn't discuss it much, I could tell by his actions that he wasn't pleased about it. Since I was still grieving over my mother at the time and my dad's anger over her will was the least of my concerns, I didn't give a damn. It should have been sufficient for him because she had left him all of her bridal jewelry and the presents he had given her. A few weeks after the funeral, he and Julia returned to Houston, and I've been living here alone ever since. But my dad told me around 6 months ago that he was now engaged to Julia and that he planned to marry her in his house. It didn't make sense to remain in a hotel when there was a property with enough more rooms, so he intended to return here in the weeks before the wedding. In order to avoid any problems with schools, her daughters were likewise homeschooled. For a few reasons, I agreed with him and let them move into my home and reside with me before the wedding. Since Julia and I got along well and I was sick of living alone, I didn't see any issues with letting them live with me. Additionally, I didn't have to worry about going over budget because my dad promised to split all of the costs with me while they were living here. They have been here ever since they moved in with me almost a month ago. I felt a lot less lonely than I did when I lived alone, and it was good to have them around. I believed I could adjust to this. I even looked forward to the day they all left and returned to their regular lives, since I would have to do the same thing by myself. However, my dad asked me whether I would be open to letting them all reside here permanently 2 weeks ago, 3 days prior to the wedding. He stated that he had returned here to help me feel a little more at ease with the notion of living with him and becoming a member of a family, which was completely unexpected. The thought of me living here alone didn't sit well with him. Now that he believed we were getting along, he wanted to know if I would be open to making this a permanent arrangement, which he intended to introduce to me gradually. I wanted to say yes at once, but I was a little perplexed by his actions after learning that he wouldn't be getting the house back. I didn't believe it was a good idea to make it a permanent arrangement so soon, even though I would have wanted to. I didn't want to act on my feelings and make a mistake. I didn't have to let them all live with me, even though I knew this was the only sensible way to deal with my intense loneliness. They had barely been residing here for a month. I told him I needed some time to ponder, even though I really wanted to say yes. For whatever reason, I had a gut feeling that it would be best for me to wait and not make a hurried choice. I put aside my sentiments and promised to let him know what I had decided after the wedding. Although he didn't bring up the subject, he appeared upset. We had a terrific time at their wedding, which took place 10 days ago. After the wedding, they were expected to remain here for a few more days before going back home. They all went off on their honeymoon without telling me, just as I was about to tell them what I had decided. Everyone had left when I woke up 2 days after their wedding, leaving me all by myself. I decided to call since many of their possessions were still at my place, but nobody picked up for a while. I kept worrying about it. For hours, I was unable to contact them, even though I had intended to inform them of my choice that same day. When Julia finally responded at lunchtime, she nonchalantly told me that they had all left for their honeymoon and wouldn't be returning for a week. I was taken aback because I clearly thought that even if I wasn't part of their plans, they would at least tell me about them before departing. I didn't want to sound petty, but I felt insulted that they hadn't asked me. I began by questioning why none of this had been communicated to me. Using the pathetic excuse that they had failed to inform me, she promised me that they would return shortly. That wasn't the purpose at all, I attempted to explain. My problem was that it was impolite of them to just walk out without saying anything or even saying goodbye. Her tone shifted when I mentioned that I wanted to speak with my dad. She claimed that my dad was too busy to speak with me. Nevertheless, I made an effort to remain composed and instructed her to notify me when he had some free time so that I could speak with him personally. I expressed it courteously, but she changed her attitude entirely. She changed from being kind to harsh and savage. She advised me not to worry them and informed me that my dad would be busy for the next few days. There was no need to act so hysterically just because they left me behind, she continued. She then felt compelled to remind me that I was no longer a child and that I had to come to terms with the fact that my dad had a new family. She went on to say that she wanted me to quit thinking about myself and tidy the house for them when they got home. She wasn't going to speak to me in that manner, and I'm not sure to whom she thought she was speaking. When she said that, she immediately hung up, and I was immediately furious. After seeing this side of his new wife, I thanked the world for keeping me from accepting my dad's offer and decided not to call him again. They were not going to live with me in any way. I therefore packed everything they owned as haphazardly and shoddily as I could, crammed it all into a few cardboard boxes, and left it in the yard for them to discover when they made the decision to come back. Since such items didn't belong to me and didn't belong in a house that belonged to me, I didn't give a damn what would happen to them. After that, I carried on with my life as usual, making an effort to ignore the sense of betrayal I had experienced due to my dad's senseless actions. They finally got back from their honeymoon yesterday. Fortunately, they discovered all of their belongings in the yard while I was at work. In the interim, I also replaced the door locks, which prevented them from entering. When my dad called me about it, he was furious. Since they hadn't done anything illegal and leaving me at home without warning wasn't something to be upset about, he told me I was being a spoiled child and that I was overreacting. I instructed him to get his boxes and go, and I would call the police if I saw them on my property when I got home. I couldn't waste time worrying about it because I had to return to work after he insulted me and hung up. They had taken their belongings and left when I arrived home from work. That seemed to be the end of it. The worst part, however, was still to come. My dad called me at midnight to let me know that Julia had something to say to me. She retracted everything she had said and expressed regret for the way she had spoken to me. She went on to say that she didn't want to remain on bad terms with me over something so trivial and that she would welcome a second chance to make things right. I didn't need her phony excuses, so I instructed her to stop talking and go away. Since I wouldn't be letting them live with me, I understand why she felt the need to act like a happy family. She wouldn't have delayed so long to acknowledge her mistake if she genuinely regretted what she had done. She would have apologized throughout their vacation or maybe immediately following that phone call. My dad probably doesn't regret anything either, but he decided to appear nostalgic when he knew I wouldn't forgive them. He accused me of being cold-hearted for not allowing them to live with me. He wanted to live in this house because it made him think of my mother, but he said he was willing to split all the expenses if I allowed him to return. He claimed that since he only wanted to feel closer to my mother, it would be self-centered of me to throw them out in this way without considering the consequences. He even attempted to justify Julia's actions by saying that she had simply had a rough day and that nothing she said was intended. He went on to say that his girls wanted to return and start anew because they missed me. However, I refused to accept any of that. Since the divorce, I'd known my dad had his eye on this house, and after seeing this side of Julia, I didn't want to take any chances. I told him that since I wasn't going to change my decision, they couldn't return. Suddenly, my father broke down in tears over the phone. He said that because I refused to let him reside in the home where he had the greatest days of his life, I was the most self-centered daughter ever. He claimed that I was being petty and harsh because of a minor argument with Julia and the fact that they hadn't invited me on their honeymoon, which wasn't even the primary point of contention. My mother would despise this ugly side of me, he said. After his wife mistreated me and they didn't even invite me to go on their honeymoon, am I the bad one for not letting my dad and his new family move back in with me? First update. My initial post didn't receive the kind of response I had anticipated. I get what everyone was trying to say, but I don't believe some of you needed to be so nasty about it. Since my dad doesn't deserve it, I stayed true to my resolve and didn't allow him to move back in. I don't need any more rudeness in my life, and that's all he's been so far. At first, he and Julia were both quite sweet to me, so it was lovely while it lasted. But my dad's true colors came out when I told him that I still needed time to ponder. Unfortunately, I'm not that weak. They probably ran out of patience and believed they could intimidate me into having them live with me. Being by myself is preferable to hanging out with the wrong people. His reaction when he discovered that the house deed had been moved to me rather than to him should have been enough to make me realize how materialistic and self-centered people can be when it comes to these things, therefore I shouldn't have allowed them here at all. Regarding Julia, I'm relieved that she decided to pointlessly argue with me and ultimately caused significant harm to herself. We all could have been a happy family, or at least I suppose we could have been, had she not spoken that. However, I will never fall for their deceptive tactics again, so that will never occur. All of my grandparents had already died, I was alone, and I missed my mother. I needed a family to be there for me, but these folks are obviously not capable of doing that. Fortunately, I discovered it before it was too late. Since they left a few days ago, my dad has been phoning me frequently and texting me because I don't pick up his calls. They don't deserve it, but he feels that I should at least give them one final chance to make amends. They squandered their one and only opportunity, and I have no doubt that they will do the same if I offer them another. It doesn't make sense to take that chance because it will impact me more than anyone else. Although I regret how I treated my dad, there isn't much I can do in this circumstance. He never bothered to put forth much effort with me, and you get what you sow. He never did anything for me, therefore he has no right to be upset when he understands that I won't base my decisions in life on him and his emotions. Second update. It seems like my dad is really desperate to move and not just insists on it. Can you guess why? He was fired a few months before his wedding and has been living off his savings ever since because he didn't take the vacation he claimed to have taken. Even though he had a sizable amount of funds, he eventually told Julia that they couldn't afford to return to Houston to try their luck after an elaborate wedding and honeymoon. He was unable to cover the rent, and Julia was unable to assist either because she had quit her job to become a housewife after meeting my dad. My dad expected that I would allow them to live with me, but now they needed to find a place here. Julia didn't even bother to apologize because she didn't know about any of this until he told her the truth. I was correct when I said that she lacked genuine regret for her actions. Even though she is completely fake, my dad deserves a woman like her. He got in touch with me once more today and asked if I could allow them to move in for a few days until he could find a good job that would pay enough to continue. However, I informed him that I would not do so. I didn't need that type of negativity about me, and they had been nasty. He's an adult, he ought to have realized that a luxurious wedding and honeymoon would be inappropriate if he didn't have a job. I can appreciate the desire to flaunt one's money, but only for those who can truly afford it, not for men who have 2 teenage stepdaughters and a housewife. I'm not to blame for his decision to disregard his obligations, even if he was fully aware of them. I'm not going to feel bad about prioritizing myself. Since I am no longer responsible for any of this, they may handle things on their own. I tried to be a little more courteous than I am here because I didn't want to come off as making fun of him or anything. I contacted him and stated the same things I mentioned here. Nevertheless, he chose to see it as a parody of the situation and informed me that I would be held accountable for my actions toward him. I didn't reply since I'm not sure how to react to that. He will now find a way to blame me for it and make it my responsibility, regardless of what I say. Therefore, it is preferable to be quiet and let him suffer. I scarcely care about it anymore. Third update. Today, my dad made the decision to leave the city. However, why would he depart without informing me of my shortcomings as a daughter? He could have gone in silence, but he and his wife are who they are. They decided to turn it into a big show. I haven't spoken to him in almost 3 weeks. After that, we didn't talk again, and he didn't even try to get in touch with me. However, he and Julia texted me today to tell me that they were overjoyed to tell me that Julia's ex-boyfriend had agreed to pay for their return journey and would even allow them to stay with him. He apparently had an epiphany that he needed to see his daughters as well. Although her ex-husband paid child support and Julia had full custody of her girls, he was never quite able to find time for them. After waiting long enough for my dad and Julia to resolve their differences amicably, he offered to clean up his own mess after realizing they were of no service. I guess this is fantastic for his daughters. At least some fathers do take charge, even if it's too late. I recognize that this might have been the only answer, but they didn't tell me all of this up front. A few hours earlier, they shared a photo of their girls along with a comment that included a 4-leaf clover sticker and a fortunate clover. I'm intelligent enough to deduce the possible true reason for Julia's ex's unexpected realization and the reason he's paying for their return trip. I'm not entirely sure why he would pay for all of their airline tickets, but I believe Julia's deceit and obstinacy may have played a role. I've witnessed it firsthand before, therefore I'm positive she exhibits such behavior. I'm glad they're going because this is the last time I'll see them. I'm not sure what actually happened. After reading some of the stories people posted about their wacky families, I also recognized how fortunate I was. My dad knows I won't think twice about calling the police, so you can be sure he's a little too concerned about his reputation to try to harm me in any manner. There's no need for me to worry because I've had enough training to know how to defend myself. I have even less reason to think about them now that they're going. For me, I suppose, hooray. I still get a little lonely sometimes, but I now talk to my friends instead of moping about it since I believe that's a healthier course of action in these kinds of circumstances. After my mother died, I totally shut myself off from the world, and it wasn't until I read these remarks that I realized how lonely I had become. I will attempt to live my life to the fullest now, even though it will take some time. In contrast to many individuals my age, I have a steady job, a respectable salary, and a home of my own. I'm really appreciative of my mother for it. What more could a person want, really, than wonderful friends who genuinely care about me? I'll simply return here if I get into difficulties again, and I have no doubt that the amazing individuals who read this will assist me again. Update 4. My father called me out of the blue today. He had been attempting to contact me via calls, messages, and social media, but I didn't want to speak with him, so it wasn't shocking. I finally responded because I wanted him to stop pestering me and because I wanted to know why he was so persistent. We hadn't spoken for a few months, so I knew this would be, to put it mildly, fascinating. When he informed me that Julia had chosen to reconcile with her ex, the same person who paid for their return trip, my amazement at hearing his voice after all this time changed to incredulity. She apparently chose to return to her former relationship after things with my father didn't work out as planned. My father was distraught and shocked. He requested an opportunity to make amends and mend our friendship, and he appeared sincere in his apologies for everything that had transpired. However, I couldn't help but feel uninterested after everything that had transpired. His and Julia's actions had caused me too much worry and suffering, and I no longer wanted to allow them back into my life. I expressed my regret to him, but I had already made up my mind and had no plans to change it. I remained steadfast in my stance, despite the desperate tone in his speech. I couldn't ignore the anguish they had given me, after all. My father has been attempting to reach me ever since, but I have blocked his calls and messages. I understand that it could be challenging for him, but I must put my own mental health and well-being first. That's it for now. I've always been the black sheep, overshadowed by my golden sister. They demanded I give my house to her and even tried breaking in when I refused. I, 45F, work for one of the top IT corporations in Silicon Valley as a senior software engineer. I'm still trembling as I write this because of what just transpired with my family, but I need to tell my tale and get some outside viewpoint. My sister Rachel, 38F, was the golden child in my family, and I have always been the odd one out. Rachel was everything I wasn't, With her flawless blonde hair and endearing nature, I was the reserved one who liked to play with my chemistry rather than interacting with others. My parents never really made an effort to conceal their choice, and the difference between us was obvious from the start. I believe it's critical to recognize the pattern, therefore allow me to take you back to my early years. I won my first school science competition when I was 8 years old. With orbital patterns included, I produced a functional model of the solar system. My teacher called my parents directly because she was so amazed. They should be proud, wouldn't they? False. Rachel had a dance recital, so they were unable to attend the award ceremony. Mom said, "But honey, Rachel needs us there. She gets nervous without us watching," as she arranged Rachel's hair. The pattern was established early on. Rachel's activities, no matter how insignificant, always took precedence over my accomplishments. I can still clearly recall my 10th birthday. For weeks I had been hinting that I wanted a microscope. I ended up looking like a cupcake in a pretty pink frock instead. "But Mom, I hate dresses," I objected. She simply smiled and replied, "Nonsense. You'll look just like Rachel," which was a complete miss. The gap only grew further during middle and high school. While I lost myself in literature and experimental experiments, Rachel soared through school thanks to her charm and good features. Because, at least she's trying, her C+ grades were praised, but my consecutive A's were anticipated and barely noticed. When I reflect back on the science fair incident from my senior year, it still hurts. I had been refining my sustainable biofuels project for months. It was the state science fair, not just a school competition, so I was shocked to hear, "First place goes to Carla," when the winners were announced. I tried to express my joy during supper that night, but Mom interrupted me in the middle of my sentence. She murmured absently, "That's nice, dear." And then she turned to Rachel. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper when he said, "Princess, have you decided on your prom dress yet? We need to start looking soon." Rachel's participation ribbons from dancing recitals were on display in the living room, while the trophy I had received sat collecting dust on a shelf. I think the event with the college admission letter was when I finally realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough for them. I was thrilled to receive my acceptance letter and full scholarship to a top tech university. I waved the note as I dashed into the living room. "Mom, Dad. I got in, full ride and everything." Mom's eyes lifted from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Rachel, didn't you say you needed help picking out your prom dress?" And my moment of triumph was suddenly dismissed once more. My first taste of independence came in college, and it changed my life. All of a sudden, people recognized and even loved my love of technology. I pushed myself into computer science with a zest that even shocked me. I was flourishing in my new setting while Rachel struggled through community college, more interested in parties than schoolwork. Rachel would complain, "College is so hard," when we occasionally spoke on the phone. "I don't know how you do it, Carla." I resisted the temptation to suggest that she may find it easier if she studied more and partied less. I simply shifted the topic and muttered some ambiguous encouragement instead. Rachel revealed to me during my sophomore year that she was engaged to her high school boyfriend David, 42 million. As you might assume, their wedding was perfect. Yes, the same guy who previously asked me if science was like really hard and stuff. I stood there in a pink nightmare of a bridesmaid dress, forcing a smile for the pictures. Rachel was glowing, and David looked awkward in his tuxedo. During the reception, Mom whispered to me, "Isn't this perfect? This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter." I was hesitant to ask if she had ever dreamed of anything for me. After all, it was Rachel's day. As I focused on developing my IT job, Rachel's life appeared to be a straight-out script from our parents' fantasies. She revealed her first pregnancy within a year after getting married. 9 months later, Sophie, 8F came, and 2 years later, Nathan, 6M. In the meantime, I was advancing professionally. I worked numerous weekends and late nights as a junior developer at a tiny business in the beginning. I was one of the few workers retained when the company was bought out by a big tech corporation. From middle management to senior engineer, team lead, and finally senior software architect, I climbed my way up the corporate ladder. My family had the same reaction to every advancement and accomplishment. "That's nice, dear. Did we tell you Sophie got the lead in her school play?" Or just, "How lovely. Did you hear Nathan made the T-ball team?" As Rachel and David bought new automobiles and went on lavish vacations, I lived frugally, saving every bonus and stock option. Last year, I was ecstatic to finally find my dream home, a stunning 4-bedroom house in a fantastic neighborhood. It had finally paid off after 20 years of hard labor. During our subsequent phone conversation, I declared, "Mom, Dad, I bought a house." The person on the other end of the line paused. "A house?" Mom said slowly again. All by yourself? Yes, all by myself, I replied, my enthusiasm somewhat waning. It's a great investment and… Mom stepped in and said, but it's such a big house for one person. What will you do with all that space? I'll enjoy it, Mom, it's mine. Well, she responded, clearly disapproving in her tone. I suppose if that's what you want. Oh, did I tell you Sophie lost her first tooth yesterday? After I bought a house, the months that followed were hectic with work and getting settled. I immersed myself into the decor, making every space a representation of who I am. In order to focus on personal projects, I made the main bedroom my haven, the second bedroom my home office, the third my library, and the fourth my home laboratory. However, I began to observe a change in the dynamics of my family during this period. My parents stopped calling as often as they used to. There was a strange tension in their voices when they called. Then Mom called last week. Mom said, Carla, dear, in a sickly sweet voice. We're having a family dinner next Sunday. You'll be there, won't you? We need to talk about something important. We need to talk frequently indicates that trouble is about to break out in my family. Nevertheless, nothing could have prepared me for that dinner's events. David kept cleaning his throat anxiously while Rachel's children ran about screaming. Carla, Dad remarked, clearing his throat after dinner, we need to talk about your house. My hackles stood up. What about my house? Well, you see, sweetie, he added, both of them looking at Mom. We've been thinking, that big house of yours, it's really too much for just one person. Dad, we've been over this. I like my house, it's mine. Mom jumped right in. What your father is trying to say is that Rachel and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting cramped. Rachel's sudden interest in her plate caught my attention. I asked, but I had a dreadful suspicion that I already knew where this was going. And we think, Mom said in a condescending tone, that since you're childless and single, you ought to give your house to Rachel and her family. My expectation was that someone would shout, gotcha, and let me know it was all a prank. But all I saw were faces full of anticipation. You can't be serious, I said at last. Now, Carla, Mom replied condescendingly. Don't be selfish. Rachel needs the space more than you do. Selfish? I asked again, raising my voice. How is it selfish to want to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for myself? Dad added, it's your sisterly duty to help in times of need. I looked at Rachel. And what do you have to say about this? She eventually looked into my eyes and shrugged. Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. And it's not like you're using all those rooms anyway. What I was hearing was unbelievable. As if I were the irrational one for not giving up my house, my own family was pleading with me to do so. No, I firmly responded as I got to my feet. Absolutely not, I'm not giving up my house. I heard Dad say, think about it, Carla. Family should come first, as I picked up my coat and made my way to the door. The repercussions. It has been a nightmare in the days since that terrible family supper. First, I ignored my parents and Rachel's incessant calls and messages. Then the flying monkeys struck. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my home and the decisions I had made in life. It was Aunt Beatrice who called first. Your poor sister needs a home for her children, and you're living all alone in that big house. Shame on you. She interrupted me when I attempted to clarify that it was my home, purchased with my own funds. In my day, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like misers. The real kicker came next. Well, if you're not going to use all that space, you should at least consider donating your eggs. It's not like you're using them anyway. I almost dropped the phone because I was so stunned. I was about to reply when she continued primly. You're not getting any younger, you know? Tick-tock. Edna, my great-aunt, left a voicemail. Carla, dear, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you'd need that big house. Your sister has a family. What do you need 4 bedrooms for? Your work? Uncle Robert texted. A series of increasingly audacious messages continued to arrive. Every relative appeared to have a different take on my life decisions and how I ought to manage my possessions. To prevent getting more texts when I get home, I've started staying late at work. My phone is always buzzing with guilt trips and new judgments. Even though I've blocked a number of them, they continue to originate from fresh ones. But something feels different tonight. Call it paranoia or intuition, but I can't shake the uneasy sense that my family might try something out of the ordinary. Especially concerning was Rachel's final message. You'll see reason eventually, one way or another. Reddit, I need your advice. Am I being selfish, really? Should I risk being totally shunned by my family by standing my ground, Or should I just give in to keep the peace? Above all, should I be concerned about Rachel's most recent message? First update. Since I first posted about my family attempting to coerce me into selling my house, 2 weeks have gone by. I am utterly disturbed by what transpired yesterday morning, and I must share this amazing news. I've spent the last few days working from home due to a severe cold. Nothing major, just enough to satisfy my boss's demand that I take a break. I was on a video conference with my team at around 10 in the morning when I heard a sound that chilled me to the bone, someone attempting to open my front door. I initially believed I was dreaming, but then I heard the familiar jingle of keys and recognizable murmurs. After muting my phone and sneaking over to the front window, I was astounded by what I saw. My parents, Rachel, and David were on my porch, and there was a moving truck parked in my driveway. I caught them red-handed as I threw open the door. When they helped me move in last year, Mom was actually holding a set of keys. They must have made copies. "Carla," Mom exclaimed, almost dropping the keys in the process. We thought you'd be at work." I couldn't help but ask incredulously, "So you decided to break into my house?" Rachel moved forward with righteous wrath, but at least Dad had the grace to appear ashamed. "You're being completely unreasonable about this, Carla. We thought if we just took the initiative." More details that infuriated me were revealed at that point. Furniture had already filled half of the moving truck. Actually, they were going to move Rachel's family in while I was ostensibly at work. Rachel added, "We were just going to wait for you to come home." As though that would help. I yelled, "No, you weren't," and pointed to the truck. "You were planning to move in behind my back while I was gone." At that moment, I saw movement on the other side of the roadway. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, had her phone in her hand and was observing from her window. She mouthed, "Police?" after catching my attention. I gave a grateful nod. I said, "I've called the police," in a trembling but forceful voice. "You wouldn't," sneered my dad. "Your own family?" The sirens sounded as if at the exact moment. When a police car arrived, my family's faces lost their color. 2 policemen came to observe the scene. One questioned, suspiciously glancing at the moving vehicle. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes, officer," I responded, attempting to maintain a calm tone. "These people were attempting to break into my home." "Carla," exclaimed my mom. "How could you?" My family was examined by the officers. "Is this true?" The officer held up a hand as my father began to stutter forth an explanation. It was both exciting and upsetting what happened next. "Sir, trying to enter a property without the owner's permission is a serious offense. I'm going to need to see some ID from everyone." The officers took pictures of the moving vehicle, recorded the duplicate keys, and obtained statements. They clarified that although they would not make any arrests this time, they would record the incident and charge anyone who tried to make an arrest again. Rachel glanced around as they were being led off my land. "You'll regret this, Carla. You'll end up old and alone." I sat down on my couch, trembling, after everyone had gone. However, the day was far from done. An hour or so later, I got a call from a surprising person. Aunt Margaret, Maggie, my mother's sister. "Carla," she gently began. "I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why they're really after your house." I was astonished by what she told me. She apparently works at the bank where my family conducts business, and she has observed some quite alarming trends. In addition to living over their means with fancy automobiles and lavish holidays, Rachel and David are heavily indebted due to David's severe gambling addiction. For years, he has been surreptitiously depleting their accounts. However, things worsen. A few years ago, my parents lost a lot of money in a pyramid scheme. They were going to move in with Rachel and David after they purchased my house, but they've been barely making ends meet. Maggie clarified, "I confronted your mother about it? That's why she stopped talking to me last year. I've been watching this train wreck happen in slow motion, and I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I can now see why their desire to acquire my house was so intense. All of them are in danger of going bankrupt. Not only did they desire my house, but they also required it as a source of income. The remainder of the day has been devoted to installing security cameras, changing my locks, and taking notes on everything. Just in case, I'm also considering obtaining a restraining order. In order to have hard proof of everything, Aunt Maggie has recommended that we engage a private investigator. She believes that there may be more to this narrative than what we now understand. Living in a horrible soap drama is how I feel. How did this become my life? Once we have additional information from the investigator, I'll provide another update. I feel secure in my home for the time being, but I can't help but wonder what other secrets my family may be keeping. I appreciate all of your help and guidance. I was even more in need of those security cameras than I had initially believed. Second update. I'm in complete awe of our private investigator Diana's findings. I had underestimated the depth of this rabbit hole. Yesterday, Diana met with Aunt Maggie and me at a peaceful cafe that is not close to the places my family usually visits. The attempted home invasion appeared to be only the beginning of what she disclosed. David has been living two separate lives. Diana not only verified his addiction to gambling, but she also discovered a 2-year-long affair with my cousin Jenny. While Rachel and my parents were struggling financially, he was spending money on weekend vacations, upscale hotels, and pricey presents. Diana replied, "Look at these credit card statements," which included frequent expenses at the Grand Hotel, Tiffany's jewelry purchases, and weekend getaways to Las Vegas. They were all from the same places and matched Jenny's social media posts. This is where it becomes even more twisted though. The funds David spent on his extravagant affair? My parents contributed a large amount. For what they believed to be a business investment, they had been lending him money. He was using it to finance his second life instead. Diana also discovered proof that David opened a different Cayman Islands bank account. By pretending it was for a high-yield investment opportunity, he has been embezzling money from my parents' retirement account. Actually, he has been using it to keep up his affair with Jenny and pay off his gambling losses. Diana stated, "Your parents' retirement account has been nearly drained," as she passed over another paperwork. They've been living on credit cards, believing David's promises that a big return on investment is just around the corner. Diana's discovery of emails between David and Jenny about their scheme to use my property as collateral for a loan in order to hide their tracks before Rachel found out was the most startling revelation. Diana clarified, "They intended to obtain a second mortgage on your home. The paperwork was already being prepared, they just needed to get physical possession of the property first. That's why they attempted the break-in. They weren't just trying to move Rachel and the kids in. They were racing against time to secure the house before their whole financial house of cards collapsed." Aunt Maggie, who had been studying the papers in silence, interrupted. "There's more," she added in a strained voice. "Look at these transfer dates. They align perfectly with your Uncle Bob's business's supposed expansion dates." I was slammed by the implication like a truck. Jenny's father, Uncle Bob, had been unwittingly using his business loans to David to finance his daughter's romance. I've made the decision to call a family gathering. My parents, Rachel, David, Uncle Bob, Aunt Clara, Jenny, and all the other family members who have been bugging me about my house will be present. They are coming to my house, the house they attempted to steal, at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I will present all of this evidence, with bank statements, hotel receipts, pictures, and email correspondence. Diana has put together a thorough presentation of her research. Aunt Maggie will be present to verify the bank account information. To make sure that things don't go out of control, I've even recruited security. You need to be prepared, Diana cautioned me. When cornered, people like this tend to lash out. They might try to blame you for investigating or accuse you of destroying the family. I'm tired of being the family doormat, even though I know she's right. Everything is different tomorrow. I feel bad for bringing this to everyone's attention, especially Uncle Bob and Rachel. Both of them are also sufferers of this. However, I can't find it in my heart to be nice about this after years of being treated like a second-class family member and being forced to give up my house to cover for their falsehoods. The security cameras have been set up. The evidence is arranged. My family will discover tomorrow that the quiet, dependable sister they have been taking for granted has finally had enough. After the meeting, I'll provide another update. I have a feeling it will be explosive. I'm currently here in my home office, going over these records, and trying to comprehend how the family that made me feel self-centered for keeping my house was actually going to use it to hide their own network of deceit and lies. After the heated family gathering, the dust has finally settled, but my life has taken a totally unexpected turn. I want to explain how everything transpired and the current situation. The altercation proceeded as Diana had anticipated. The room exploded when I showed them the proof of David's financial schemes and affair with Jenny. The security personnel had to restrain Uncle Bob after he lunged at David. Jenny attempted to leave the room, but Aunt Maggie barred the door, and Rachel broke down in tears. The best part was when I showed my ace card, which was recordings of David and Jenny talking about how they were going to use my house as collateral for loans. My parents' faces became pale when they recognized the full scope of their alleged investment opportunity. In the aftermath, I made a firm move. I started by informing the ethics committee of David's business about his financial malfeasance. He was put on administrative leave pending investigation within 24 hours. He was fired at the conclusion of the week for breaking company finance regulations. Additionally, his professional licenses were revoked. I then assisted Uncle Bob in starting legal action to recoup his business loans using Diana's proof. David had misrepresented the entire investment strategy, according to the damning paperwork. Although the matter was resolved out of court, David's remaining possessions were taken away. My parents had to come to terms with themselves. After I reported the questionable activity, the bank opened an investigation into their accounts. All 5 of them now jammed into a tiny rented apartment, just as they had intended to do in my house, after being forced to sell their home to pay off their debts. After learning of David's complete betrayal, Rachel filed for divorce. She attempted to apologize to me, saying she was unaware of his plans for my property, but considering that she actively participated in the attempted break-in, I don't think it's credible. In all of this, my connection with Alex, 50 million, whom I met at my neighborhood rock climbing gym, has been the most surprising development. He travels the world taking pictures of endangered species for half of his time as a wildlife photographer. In contrast to my family, he recognized and appreciated my independence and job right away. We developed a relationship organically and without coercion. We support one another's goals while enjoying our independence, and he has a prosperous career and home of his own. He put up his photography gear in my home lab last week, joking that the lighting was ideal for both my circuit board documenting and his wildlife photos. I now consider Aunt Maggie to be my real family. Every week, we get together for supper and talk about everything from her crazy childhood memories to investing techniques. She shocked me last month when she disclosed that she had changed her will to name me as her heir. She responded to my protest by saying, "You're the daughter I never had, Carla, the one who truly understands the value of hard work and integrity." Most of the remainder of the family has split up into different camps. It seems that Jenny and David made an effort to keep dating, but as soon as the money stopped coming in, their romance ended. She has relocated to a different location, and he has accepted a position at a Nevada used car dealership, which is very different from his previous executive one. Rachel and my parents still make an effort to get in touch with me on occasion, mainly when they need money. I've blocked their phone numbers and told my attorney to take care of any correspondence. Their most recent attempt was especially pitiful. Rachel left a crying message stating that she and the children were going to be evicted. Aunt Maggie then informed me that they had more than enough money for rent. They were merely attempting to mislead me emotionally once more. My career has seen the most satisfying transformation. I've been able to give my career my whole attention without the continual drain of family conflict. My firm just promoted me to Chief Technology Officer, something I might not have accomplished if I were still subjected to their emotional manipulation and incessant demands. I now consider my house to be my home. The area they once attempted to take has been transformed into a sanctuary by me. Modern equipment has been added to the home lab, and one of the bedrooms has been converted into a library and photography studio where Alex and I work on our individual projects. Originally put for protection, the security cameras now primarily record wildlife in my garden. In order to record the family of foxes that have taken up residence beneath my deck, Alex has even installed a few specialist cameras. The fact that my house, which my relatives said was too big for one person, is now more loving and purposeful than they could have ever dreamed is a lovely irony. I've discovered that family is about respect, understanding, and support for one another rather than blood ties or duties. I've learned what true family looks like from Aunt Maggie, Alex, and my close friends. They love me for who I am rather than what they believe I should be, they support my decisions rather than criticize them, and they celebrate my accomplishments rather than downplaying them. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. I was able to resist being abused by my biological family because to your counsel and support. And to anyone experiencing similar familial pressure, keep in mind that despite expectations from family, you have the right to defend what you fought so hard to achieve. Despite what some people may think, my narrative isn't about retaliation. It's about establishing a life full of true love and respect and at last escaping poisonous family relationships. There are instances when the family you chose is superior to the one you were born into. I recognize the irony that my family lost everything in the end when they attempted to steal my house, but I gained a real family and a level of happiness I never imagined was possible. My fiancée left me for my brother on our wedding day, with my parents' full support. Now, she sought help against her husband's controlling behavior. I, 35 million, had the most terrible day of my life 2 years ago. An hour prior to our wedding, my fiancée, Alexandra, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, called to inform me that she was unable to proceed. The actual bombshell? Behind my back, she had been seeing my brother Nathan, 40 million, and our parents had even supported their relationship. Have you ever watched a movie where everything seems to be going well until it all goes wrong? My life was like that. I was making good money as a senior software developer at a rapidly expanding computer business, had recently purchased a home in a desirable Boston suburb, and was getting married to the woman I believed to be my true love. Over the course of 5 years, Alex and I had planned our future, built a life together, and I thought we were in agreement on everything. Alex was a marketing executive representing her company when I first met her at a tech convention. She was intelligent, driven, and had a knack of making every space she entered seem brighter. Our mutual passion for independent video games and esoteric science fiction films made us click right away. We conversed for 6 hours on our first date, until the restaurant staff essentially had to eject us. In retrospect, I can see all the red flags I ignored because I was so enamored with her. Her treatment of service staff ought to have been the first warning sign. On the surface, she was always courteous, but her tone was tinged with contempt. Then there were the smaller lies, which were initially little ones, such as claiming to be out with friends when she was actually working late. She had an amazing capacity to make everything about her needs, never apologized when she damaged my feelings, and persisted on getting what she wanted. However, I dismissed it all by reminding myself that relationships necessitate compromise and that no one is flawless. My family's dynamics ought to have been an additional red flag. I work as an IT professional and I'm doing okay, nothing great. In contrast, my brother Nathan is the perfect child who is incapable of doing anything wrong. He is a successful businessman who, after graduating from college, founded his own IT company, which by his early 30s had grown to be worth millions of dollars. Why can't you be more like Nathan? Or, Nathan would have done it this way, were common refrains when I was growing up. My parents, who are both in their 60s, never attempted to conceal their partiality. I recall a Christmas when I was 15 years old. My parents' old coffee machine was breaking, so I spent the entire year saving money to get them a really excellent one. After arriving late for Christmas dinner, Nathan gave them an envelope and declared that he had purchased a cruise for them. They spent the remainder of the evening savoring cruise brochures while my meticulously wrapped coffee machine sat forgotten beneath the tree. That was only one of many examples. Every move I made was questioned because it wasn't what Nathan would have done, and every accomplishment I made was evaluated against his success. I should have seen Alex's eyes light up when Nathan told her about his business endeavors when I first introduced her to my family. I should have seen how she progressively began to get closer to him during family get-togethers and how their discussions seemed to become more in-depth and personal. However, I was too preoccupied with organizing the wedding and envisioning our future together to notice it. Like all previous important days, the wedding day began as usual. I felt both anxious and eager. Alex had fallen in love with the gorgeous vineyard location we had selected, which was outside the city and offered a breathtaking view of the mountains. The flowers, the music, and the meticulously prepared meal that had taken months to perfect were all ready. My phone rang that morning while I was standing in my hotel room, fiddling with my tie for the 100th time. Alex informed me she couldn't marry me in a chilly, almost clinical voice. Then the actual bombshell arrived. Nathan was her genuine love. She sounded no apologies. She merely stated that she needed to follow her intuition. As she described how she and Nathan had been dating for months, I stood there with my hands shaking so much that I could not hold the phone. She hoped that one day I would comprehend that they had attempted, but were unable, to fight their emotions. The worst part is that I found out my folks already knew when I arrived at the location to handle the repercussions. That morning, Nathan had informed them. They were too busy attempting to manage the situation, to spare me disgrace to warn me. With the bold suggestion that perhaps it was best, my mother Catherine, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, said, "You wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My father simply nodded, more concerned with the opinions of their golf club acquaintances than with his son's struggles. The hours that followed were a haze of canceled merchants, perplexed patrons, and pitying glances. While I sat in a back room, still wearing my wedding suit, trying to comprehend how my entire life had fallen apart in one morning, my best man attempted to take care of the practical details. My parents informed me that there had been an unfortunate situation, and the wedding had been cancelled after some guests had already come, all dressed to the nines. I didn't realize the full scope of their betrayal until months later. I learned that my parents had actively pushed Alex to leave me for Nathan through a mutual acquaintance. They had assured her that she would have a better life with Nathan and that she was too good for me, promising to provide for her financially if she decided to choose him over me. For months, they had been planning this behind my back while grinning at me and assisting with the wedding preparations. The buddy shared with me text conversations in which my mother set up accidental meetings between Nathan and Alex, giving them chances to hang out. Alex had been informed by my mother that Nathan had always harbored feelings for her and that they would be a better fit. Knowing how significant Alex's career goals were, My parents even offered to help her launch her own marketing consultancy if she decided to go with Nathan. I walked away from everything that day. I moved to a distant state, quit my job, and stopped communicating with my family. I updated my email, my phone number, everything. I couldn't bear to live in the house I had purchased with all the memories, so I let the bank foreclose on it. The awkward interactions with mutual acquaintances who were at a loss for words and the pitying glances from coworkers who had been invited to the wedding were too much for me to bear. My therapist, whom I began seeing to cope with the trauma of it all, was the only one I continued to communicate with. She assisted me in realizing that what I had gone through was a significant betrayal by everyone who was meant to love and care for me, not just a failed relationship. We unraveled how my parents' partiality had influenced my relationships and sense of self as we worked through the years of family dynamics that had brought us to this place. Although they haven't been easy, the last 2 years have been essential. I rented a modest apartment in a peaceful area, got a new job at another computer business in Denver, and began gradually re-establishing my life. Through a local hiking group, I gained new friends who welcomed me for who I am now and didn't know anything about my background. I began meditation, worked on my mental health, and discovered how to be content on my own. I even hesitantly resumed dating. Just casual dinners and coffee meetings, nothing serious. Every date made it clearer to me that Alex's behavior and the toxic relationships in my family were more important than my personal value. I discovered how to follow my gut and recognize warning signs in others rather than justifying them. I poured myself into new tasks at work, which led to a promotion and the appreciation of my coworkers. For the first time in my life, Nathan's accomplishments were not being used to gauge my own. I could just produce my best job and be myself, and that would be plenty. My newfound acquaintances appreciated me for who I am, not for what they believed I ought to be. I believed that chapter of my life was finally over. I had a good group of friends, was doing well at work, and was even considering purchasing a home once more. Without the looming specter of my family's expectations, I had established a new life for myself, one that was based on my own terms. Then Alex arrived at my door last week. First update. Last week, I nearly didn't recognize Alex when I opened my door and saw her standing there. I had lost the slick, self-assured marketing executive I had known. Someone who appeared to have not slept well in weeks took her place. Her once flawless makeup was unable to cover up the heavy circles under her eyes, and her fancy attire had been swapped out for a simple sweater and trousers. When I allowed her in, she was trembling, not from the chilly Denver night, but from what I soon discovered to be ongoing anxiety. She told me everything while we sat in my living room, which is where I've been reconstructing my life for the past 2 years. As my parents had predicted, her marriage to Nathan had begun happily ever after. He lavished her with costly presents, helped her launch her own marketing firm, and purchased her a home in Boston's most affluent neighborhood. However, the dream soon became a nightmare. It turns out that underneath his endearing facade, Nathan is precisely who I always believed him to be. Everyone's favorite wealthy, charismatic businessman is a skilled manipulator. Alex talked about how he gradually took over every part of her life behind closed doors. It started out with suggestions on her business choices. Demands concerning who she could collaborate with followed. He eventually took a seat on the board of her business and was given the last word on all contracts. She described the gaslighting to me, including how he would move items around their home and claim she was responsible, how he would contradict their conversations from a few hours prior, and how he would tell their acquaintances she was losing her mind anytime she attempted to confront him. The worst thing? Everything was made possible by our parents, particularly our mother Catherine. Alex wiped away her tears and remarked, "Your mom tells me I'm lucky to have Nathan and that I need to try harder to make him happy." "That's just how successful men protect their interests," she responded when I informed her about his threat to steal everything if I left. Hearing about their son, my nephew, who is now entangled in all of this, was more heartbreaking than Alex's tragedy. Alex claims that even though he is only 18 months old, Nathan is already acting in a domineering manner toward him. Nathan has very stringent restrictions regarding everything, including the baby's playthings, colors, and when he can sleep. If the infant cries during his crucial calls, he becomes irate and accuses Alex of not managing him properly. She started crying when I brought up the subject of a potential divorce. Nathan has stated unequivocally that he will ruin her if she leaves. He has the resources, the contacts, and, above all, the backing of our parents. He has vowed to deny her custody of their son, force her to pay for her legal bills, and make sure she never again works in marketing. She came to me for that reason. To testify in court, she needs someone who is aware of the reality about our family, someone who can discuss Nathan's actual character, the pattern of deception, and the enabling actions of our parents. She believes that my evidence could support her cause, particularly with relation to custody. No, I replied. I didn't argue or yell. I simply informed her that I couldn't assist. I'll probably never forget the expression on her face. The difficulty is that I've learned in therapy for the past 2 years that I'm not in charge of solving other people's problems. I put a lot of effort into setting limits and removing my family's poisonous influence from my life. My phone was overflowing with texts the following day. News of Alex's visit had somehow spread. Suddenly, I had a lot to say from people I had not spoken to since the wedding fiasco. They referred to me as cowardly, selfish, and uncaring. A particularly nasty note about how I was proving my family right, that I was too weak and self-centered to step up when it mattered, was emailed to me by Alex's former maid of honor. The level of hypocrisy is astounding. 2 years ago, none of these folks defended me. When I was the one in pain, none of them gave assistance or pointed out the manipulation by my family. They now ask me to put my painstakingly reconstructed life and mental health at danger in order to support the woman who deceived me. One message struck especially hard. Your nephew, an innocent child, is involved, a mutual friend wrote. Alex doesn't deserve to suffer for everything he did to you. And that's the reason I can't sleep at night. That young guy is on my mind all the time. Being born into this chaos was not anything he requested. None of this was his choice. Alex is growing up in a home that might leave him permanently scarred if what he says is accurate, which I think is based on my experience with Nathan. I understand what it's like to be raised in Nathan's shadow. Will things go worse for his son? However, becoming involved would require me to reintegrate with my family. It would entail dealing with Nathan once more, enduring the manipulation of our parents, and possibly being the object of my brother's retaliation. I might lose everything I've worked so hard to build over the last 2 years. I am therefore at a crossroads. Do I uphold the limits I've worked so hard to create, putting my stability and mental health first? Or should I put everything on the line to save a defenseless child from the same toxic family dynamics that harmed me? To be honest, I have no idea what to do. My therapist advises me to carefully consider what I can contribute in a practical way without endangering my own health. However, every time I attempt to reason with it, I see the image of that young boy. I need your opinion, Reddit. Am I being self-centered by not offering assistance? Or should I defend the tranquility I've at last discovered? What exactly would it look like to assist my nephew without getting sucked into the family conflict again? Second update. A week has passed since my last report, and things have become worse in unexpected ways. My family seems desperate to pull me back into their insanity, even though I hoped that ignoring everything would make it go away. Nathan sent me an email yesterday morning. My stomach dropped when I saw his name in my email. It was a brief but menacing message. I've heard that our ex-fiancé came to you in tears. If you know what's best for you, stay out of family affairs. It's been 2 years since you were involved, don't change anything. For a long time, I stared at those words, feeling a mixture of sorrow and, shockingly, fury. The ostensibly wealthy and successful brother is threatening his own sibling because he fears losing power. If it weren't so depressing, the irony would be funny. However, Nathan wasn't the only one who chose to end the 2-year silence. I was at work when our mother, Catherine, called. Some part of me still freezes when I see Mom on my caller ID, even if I should have ignored it. The same tone Mother used to try to control me as a child. Her voice sounded sickly sweet. Without even saying hello, she began. Sweetheart, I know Alex came to see you. You must realize that although she is going through a tough moment, it does not imply that she is thinking rationally. Nathan is making every effort to be a decent father and spouse. She changed her strategy when I didn't answer. Your brother's company is currently at a pivotal moment. Everything he's built might be destroyed by this divorce foolishness. He deserves better from his own brother, don't you think? I was able to find my voice at last. As if I were entitled to better treatment from my own family. There was an overwhelming quiet on the other end. The guilt trip followed. What's best for both of our guys has always been our goal. Families must keep together even though parents make errors. At this moment, Nathan needs you to be the bigger person. I ended the call. My phone began to vibrate with texts from members of my extended family a few minutes later. Catherine had apparently rallied the whole family. After the wedding fiasco, my aunts, uncles and cousins, people who hadn't bothered to check on me, became quite worried about family unity. A cousin wrote, "Neither of your parents is growing any younger. Do you want them to worry about raising their grandchild in a dysfunctional household for the rest of their lives?" Another message was sent. "True men don't harbor resentment. Be the larger person." My father's sister sent me the most vexing message. "Although your brother erred, he granted Alex all of her wishes. You're supporting her conduct, and she's just being ungrateful. It's amazing how they've created this story in which I'm the bad guy for not supporting their idealized family image. They will disregard any proof of Nathan's abusive behavior because they are so committed to his image as the successful son. Then, something that truly shocked me occurred tonight. Nathan was contacted by a former coworker who still works with him. He claimed to have seen several unsettling things happen at work, including Nathan hurling explosive outbursts at staff members, threatening them covertly, and falsifying financial records. He claims that a number of workers have left because of the poisonous workplace, but Nathan's attorneys have them bound by non-disclosure agreements. According to this coworker, if I assisted Alex, perhaps others might be more inclined to speak up about Nathan's actions. He did, however, caution me that Nathan had been asking me questions about my new life in Denver, such as my address and place of employment. The danger is obvious. Nathan will target my new life if I assist Alex. He has the means to seriously challenge me on a personal and professional level. And, as always, our parents would be there for him. I've put forth too much effort to create this tranquil life. My therapist says I've made amazing strides in establishing healthy boundaries, I have true friends who embrace me for who I am, and my career is going great. It scares me to think of losing all that. However, my colleagues' remarks, about further possible witnesses, continue to cross my mind. This is about more than just Alex and my nephew, if what he says is accurate. Dozens of people might be harmed by Nathan's misuse of authority. I've been recording everything, even the intimidating email, the deceptive phone call, and the flying monkey attacks from family members. Although she tells me that I'm not required to burn myself alive to keep others warm, my therapist says this might be significant. Not only should I assist Alex, but I also have a moral duty to call out Nathan's actions before he causes more harm. But am I prepared for the impending storm? I need your advice, Reddit. How can you oppose someone who has all the resources, family support, and power on their side? And is it worth putting everything I've rebuilt at risk in order to act morally? Third update. I struggled with what to do for several restless nights after my last update. Though not in the manner anyone had anticipated, the matter has settled itself. I want to tell you everything that transpired and the reasons behind my decisions. I must first clarify a crucial point. I had a breakthrough session with my therapist following Catherine's deceptive call and Nathan's threatening email. We talked about how my family has always followed the same pattern. Incite a problem, put pressure on me to resolve it, and then utilize my assistance to keep their poisonous system in place. She made it clear to me that getting directly involved would only make this cycle worse. But she also made a very important point. There are ways to help that don't involve me re-engaging with my family's manipulation or sacrificing my mental health. That's when I decided what to do. I sent Child Protective Services a thorough anonymous report. I didn't make this choice lightly. I spent 3 days compiling all of the information I had, including screenshots of the family's nasty texts, emails, text messages, and Nathan's threatening letter. I incorporated all of Alex's information regarding Nathan's domineering actions toward their son. I described how our family has a history of condoning abuse and hiding issues in order to keep up appearances. The report covered more ground than merely the current state of affairs. I gave background information on Nathan's manipulative tendencies and how our parents have traditionally condoned his actions. I gave specific examples, such as how they concealed his college drunk driving episode, how they settled a former employee's harassment lawsuit, and how they have continuously exploited their resources and connections to shield him from repercussions. Additionally, I sent proof of possible financial irregularities that my former coworker had brought up. I thought this gave a more complete picture of Nathan's personality and the depth of his manipulation, even though it might not have a direct bearing on the CPS investigation. Waiting was the most difficult part. Since I was reporting anonymously, I knew I wouldn't receive updates on the status of CPS investigations, which take time. However, I had at least taken a step that would benefit my nephew while still respecting my personal boundaries. Then things began to move more quickly than I had anticipated. Nathan sent me a flurry of angry messages 3 days after I submitted the report. His emails become more and more erratic. You think you can hide behind anonymity? I know it was you. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. You think you're safe in Denver? Watch your back. You're dead to this family. Remember that. You chose this. Catherine had a different but no less informative reaction. I'm still troubled by the voicemail she left. How could you do this to your own family? We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? Nathan is devastated. They're investigating him like a common criminal. His reputation could be ruined. I hope you're happy with yourself. What's interesting? None of the accusations were refuted by any of them. They were upset with me because I dared to reveal the truth, Not because I made unfounded accusations. After mostly remaining mute during this ordeal, my father suddenly revealed his actual nature. In a letter, he threatened to remove me from his will if I didn't fix this situation immediately. His lawyer wrote the letter. I recognized the hypocrisy of threatening to disown someone who had already left the family. Then Alex sent a surprise message. Hers was shorter than the others and had a distinct tone. I know it was you. Thank you. I'm sorry for everything. I was more affected by those 9 words than by all of Nathan's threats put together. They were the first sincere admission of guilt I had ever gotten from anyone connected to this catastrophe. I learned through rumors that Alex had the leverage she required because of CPS's participation. Nathan's threats of assuming complete custody were less significant because an inquiry was still underway. While the inquiry is ongoing, she was able to obtain emergency temporary custody of their kid. The response from the family has been explosive. The complete force of flying monkeys has been unleashed. My inbox is overflowing with messages from distant cousins I haven't spoken to in years, accusing me of betraying my own blood and ruining the family. On social media, former family friends are expressing their sadness at the way jealousy splits families apart in ambiguous, passive-aggressive condolence posts. The problem is that I'm not as affected by their responses as I used to be. I've never had this level of clarity before, thanks to 2 years of treatment and self-work. Their manipulating techniques are evident to me. Every threat, guilt trip, and effort to get me to reconsider my choice only serves to prove that I chose the right one. My family is upset because I refuse to fulfill my designated part in their dysfunction, not because I have harmed them, my therapist pointed out. I violated the pattern they have been using for decades by opting to safeguard my nephew through legitimate procedures instead of taking part in their cover-up. The fallout has been dramatic but illuminating. I've had to react to the circumstance by taking a number of measures. To make sure they were aware of any threats, I first alerted the security people at my employer about the probable harassment. In order to safeguard myself against any possible reprisals, I also started working with a lawyer. I've had to keep my social media presence totally secret and bolster my personal security measures because of the situation. I didn't want to perform these actions, but they were essential for my security and comfort. But I've also received unanticipated help. A number of cousins who had previously remained silent have privately expressed their pride in me for confronting the family. I've received calls from 2 of Nathan's former workers who want to provide statements in favor of Alex. After hearing the whole story, even some old friends who had previously condemned my choice have changed their minds. Above all, I am comfortable with my choice. Yes, there may be repercussions. Nathan may attempt to undermine my career. The family may actually carry out their threats. However, I'm not basing my decisions on my fear of their reactions for the first time in my life. You're missing the point. Whoever messaged me and said that I'm taking the coward's way out by reporting anonymously rather than going up to Nathan personally. This has nothing to do with conflict or retaliation. It was about figuring out how to support them without putting my own mental health at risk or being entangled in their poisonous relationship again. I have no idea what will occur next. Custody disputes can last many months or even years, and CPS investigations can take many different paths. However, I am aware that I upheld my personal boundaries while doing everything I could to protect an innocent youngster. I discovered a technique to assist without having to burn myself alive to keep others warm. Thank you to everyone who has been reading this narrative and giving guidance. I learned from your encouragement that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean being the most dramatic or combative. Sometimes it comes down to figuring out how to protect yourself while yet bringing about change. Keep in mind that you don't have to choose between defending yourself and assisting others if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. Even if it isn't immediately apparent, there is frequently a middle ground. Furthermore, just because you were born into poisonous family systems doesn't mean you have to keep them up. Let me conclude by saying, I believe that the worst thing that could happen to me was losing my fiancé to my brother 2 years ago. I now see that it served as the wake-up call I needed to escape a dysfunctional family structure. Your lowest point can occasionally serve as the starting point for a better existence. My last update will be this one. I believe I made the proper decision for myself and my nephew, regardless of what occurs next. Caught my brother's fiancé cheating, got shunned. Years later, proven right, they only contacted me for divorce testimony. I, 30 million, attempted to persuade my brother, 35 million, to call off his wedding 3 years ago after learning that his fiancée, 33F, was unfaithful to him. Regretfully, none of the family members listened to my advice, and they nevertheless got married. Furthermore, by portraying me as a jealous person who couldn't bear to see my brother happy, they persuaded the family to cut me off. I haven't spoken to my family at all since, and they haven't made an effort to contact me either, until recently. They came a few days ago because they required me to testify in my brother's divorce proceedings. It seems that he had no intention of paying child support, but I have steadfastly refused to assist them. I'm now being accused of being selfish and callous. On the one hand, it feels like the necessary closure, and I'm rather happy that I can finally refuse them. However, some of my friends believe that I will later come to regret this choice. They think that this could be my one chance to make amends with my family, and if I turn them down now, I might not have another chance. What if I didn't testify in family court in support of my brother? I'm not sure what to do. Here is the whole tale for those of you who want to know more specifics. My brother, Mickey, and his fiancée, Na, who is now his wife, had been dating for 2 years when they were engaged. Mickey and I were not and had never been very close. Even as adults, our relationship as brothers was impacted by the fierce sibling rivalry we experienced as children. I was always, even unconsciously, in competition with him. The unfortunate thing is that my parents did little to deter this rivalry. They knew I disliked my brother and was angry that he was given preferential treatment over me simply because he was succeeding in life. To be fair, I was ignorant at the time and thought that families shouldn't evaluate you based on your performance. I believed that they ought to be somewhat neutral, particularly when it comes to siblings. Naturally, I now understand that's not how it operates. Everyone evaluates you according to your level of success, and family is no different. I had no idea how to approach things diplomatically at the time. Just whatever was on my mind, I would express it. Consequently, my parents discovered that I harbored animosity toward my brother since, despite my aversion to admitting it, he had consistently outperformed me in some areas. Unfortunately, for my parents, these certain things were all that counted. Mickey did exceptionally well in science, math, and related subjects. After graduating from college, he began working at a rapidly expanding computer business and earned a lot of money early on. He was intelligent, and his career graph kept getting better, so it wasn't shocking. However, I wasn't doing that well. I wanted to be a writer, so I went after a degree in literature. When I realized I was probably not as good a writer as I had been told throughout my youth, I became despondent and left school in my second year. I was just average in most things when I was younger, but I was incredibly good at writing. At least in that sense, I thought I was comparable to my brother because I would win various contests. I used my writing abilities as a means of competing with his academic and project accomplishments. But after leaving college, I worked as a freelance copywriter in an attempt to make a living on my own. My brother was doing really well and had even begun to repay our parents, while I was barely making enough to live on my own. Comparisons between us were inevitable, of course. My parents always made it a point to encourage me to get a more respectable career and to take my life more seriously whenever the family gathered together. At the conclusion of each lesson about my life, they would either compare me to my brother, advise me to learn from him, or say something equally irritating. These discussions frequently devolved into yelling contests. I would tell them that I was sick of being treated the same way since I was a child and that they were being bad parents by always comparing me to my brother. We would argue, cut off communication for a few weeks, and then they would try to make amends. It was the same ritual every time. Then, Mickey and his 2-year girlfriend became engaged. She had visited the family when they were dating, and I had met her a few times. Even while they were engaged, she seemed like a decent person and pleasant enough. However, my family threw a dinner party at our place approximately 2 weeks prior to the wedding. Despite our differences, Mickey and I always made an effort to maintain a friendly demeanor for appearances. Despite my lack of interest, I took part in every wedding-related activity. I still regret the decision I made to go out and smoke at some point during the dinner party. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of Mickey's fiancée Na making out with my younger cousin Jacob, 27 million. I had walked a short distance from the house back then because my parents were unaware that I smoked. I was perplexed when I saw Jacob's automobile because he had previously stated that he was going home. Curiosity compelled me to investigate further. I saw them together at that point. I'm not sure which of the three of us was more surprised, but I stubbed out my cigarette right once and began to head home without turning around. Na entered after a few minutes when I got back, but Jacob was not there. I suppose he went home at last. Fortunately, there were no queries about what had happened because everyone had been drinking and no one had realized that the three of us were missing. I didn't speak to my brother that evening. I left the party soon after because I hadn't had time to digest what I had witnessed. But Na persisted on messaging me all night long, pleading with me to keep what I had witnessed a secret from Mickey. She claimed that the only time she had made out with Jacob was when I saw them, and she felt a great deal of regret for it. She vowed that it would never occur again. Na begged me not to destroy her marriage, saying she was totally devoted to Mickey and would never do it again. She only asked that I keep her secret. After giving it some thought that evening, I made the decision to notify Mickey. I felt obligated to him as his brother, despite the fact that we were not particularly close. The least I could do was that. I told Mickey everything and asked if we might have lunch together the next day. He didn't answer right away, but he appeared astonished and upset. He simply thanked me for being honest with him before leaving for his house. I wasn't sure what to anticipate after that, so I was taken aback when, for a few days, no one in the family contacted me. About a week before the wedding, I discovered that everyone in the family had blocked me everywhere, which left me absolutely perplexed. I chose to go see my folks because I had no idea what was happening. I was shocked when they wouldn't even open the door. With nothing else to do, I went to see Mickey because I was sure he was involved. Mickey merely opened the door to make fun of me. He urged me to go as soon as he spotted me and began to make crude faces. His actions perplexed me much because the last time we spoke, he had expressed gratitude for my candor. But he was singing a new song now. Mickey claimed that because I was a terrible person, I was attempting to destroy his relationship with Na. I made up the narrative about her and Jacob, he said, simply to make things more dramatic. I knew Na had probably persuaded him that I was lying, even though his remarks were really hurting. I decided there was no use in debating, so I just went away without saying anything. My parents sent me a message later that day. After unblocking me, they informed me that they did not want me to get in touch with them ever again. Since I had nothing of my own, they accused me of being a jealous liar who was attempting to destroy Mickey's life and marriage. They accused me of fabricating terrible stories about my brother's fiancée in order to ruin their wedding, claiming they had always known I was bitter over his success. It was a horrible message. They declared that I was repulsive and that they no longer wished to interact with me. They were obviously duped by Na, and they trusted her more than their own son. Nothing I said would persuade them otherwise. I didn't communicate with my brother, parents, or the rest of the family for the following 5 years. They saw me as someone who, out of insecurity, had attempted to destroy Mickey's marriage. I was sick of trying, and there was nothing I could do to alter their perception of me. I decided to let it go. I was really distressed about what was occurring with my family, which made the first 5 years challenging. At first, I was depressed, but I eventually recovered. I'm doing fairly well for myself now. Since I've been in the business for years, my copywriting job pays higher, and my name is now more recognizable. I've realized how toxic my family was to me, therefore I'm happy with what I have and don't even miss them. They just came to my house and asked me to testify in family court on my brother's behalf, but I flatly refused. After everything they said to me and the way they have treated me for as long as I can remember, I don't believe I owe them anything. Nevertheless, my friends think I'll come to regret this choice. They believe that rather than excluding my family entirely, I should give them a chance, speak with them, and attempt to resolve the issue. Naturally, my family has done all in their power to make me regret my choice. They have been accusing me of being cold-hearted and self-centered in their emails and letters. They've even attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they had good reason to ignore me and think Na was superior to me at the time. As much as I hate to say it, I can see their argument. As I previously stated, if my parents made a comparison between myself and my brother, I had a propensity to snap at them. This, of course, convinced my parents that I hated Mickey. They were so tempted to believe Na when she said that I was fabricating tales about her in order to destroy Mickey's life. Not that they were correct, but my remarks throughout those arguments weren't particularly polite either. In retrospect, I can see why they initially thought that the answer was no. Furthermore, I didn't really defend myself either. I didn't strive to support my version of events and instead let things go. Since they thought I had been lying, they naturally didn't get in touch with me for the following 5 years, until they learned about Na's extramarital escapades. This past contributes to my current sense of guilt. I really think that if we had all tried, we could have resolved the issue as a family, but none of us did. I'm included in it. This is the cause of my conflict. My friends' words that this might be my only opportunity to repair my ties with my family are still ringing in my ears. Particularly when the family is as toxic as mine, I am aware that people frequently claim they can live without them. However, I can't get rid of the notion that by declining to assist, I'm committing a grave error. I truly need to know whether I'm wrong for not testifying in court on my brother's behalf. Update. After careful consideration, I have chosen not to testify on Mickey's behalf. This is not something I must do. I've gotten by quite fine without my family for the past 5 years, so I don't even need to mend our relationship. I have no doubt that my family would not have contacted me if it weren't for the divorce and child support disagreements. For the past few months, Mickey and Na have been going through the divorce procedure. They were aware that I had been speaking the truth about Na's affair at the time, so it's not like they were unaware. Until they required my assistance, they simply didn't think it was essential enough to get in touch with me. Mickey learned about the affair a few months ago when he discovered Na messaging Jacob. Na maintains that the affair has barely lasted a year, saying it began when she felt ignored by Mickey, who had been preoccupied with his job. But a few weeks ago, their 1-year-old kid underwent a court-ordered paternity test, and the results showed that the youngster is not Mickey's. After the divorce, Mickey has understandably refused to pay child support. Na, however, maintains that since he has been the child's father for the past year and not Jacob, he should keep providing for the child monetarily. I can help with this. To demonstrate that Na's affair with Jacob has been going on for more than a year, since before they were married, Mickey and my parents want me to testify in court. They require my testimony to back their claim that Jacob, Mickey's biological father, should assume responsibility and avoid paying child support. It's all quite intricate. In the end, Mickey and my parents have been aware of Na's affair for some months. They never bothered to contact me until they required my assistance, even though they knew I was telling the truth. I've been struggling with this discovery for the past few days. I finally came to the conclusion that I owed them nothing. I've had enough of them and can carry on avoiding them, as I have for the last 5 years. None of their frantic emails or messages have received a response from me. I don't even think I should. I have, however, discussed this matter with my friends, who were the ones who urged me to try to make amends and get back in touch with my family. Naturally, they wanted me to have no regrets and had my best interest in mind. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to inform them of my choice. I could see my buddies weren't totally on board when I gave them my justification. I didn't owe them an explanation, but I went into detail nevertheless. I made this decision because, following my breakup with my family 5 years ago, these people have supported me. They have my sincere gratitude for their assistance. I told them what I knew about my family's poisonous behavior and how I had been handled by them in the past. This time, I went into detail, even though they had a rough notion of what transpired. Because it was so personal and I detested reliving those experiences, I had previously avoided talking about it. However, I thought they should know how deeply it all impacted me. I opened up about everything, including the taunts and charges I encountered after telling my family the truth about Na. I also clarified that my family has only contacted me at this time because they require my assistance. They never will, and they never did appreciate me as a person. They haven't bothered to apologize for their actions even though they have known for months that I was speaking the truth. They have been defensive, but they haven't really apologized as of yet. They even tricked me for a second since I was thinking about their perspective. Ultimately, though, they ought to have trusted their son over Na, but they didn't. So be it if it costs them now. I'm unable to stop it. Back then, Mickey and my parents didn't care that I was trying to warn them. Instead, they excluded me from their life and insulted me. Going back to these people would be wrong, and I will never longer injure myself in that way. That's the reason I'm staying away. My friends reassured me that they would back my decision after I told them how I felt. They concur that I've made the best choice for me now that they are aware of the full circumstances and my feelings. We are getting along well, and for that I am quite thankful. Second update. My family first arrived at my place 2 weeks ago, pleading with me to assist them. They chose to get in touch with me once more today because I didn't reply to their emails or messages. I was at home, and it was the weekend. In the afternoon, the doorbell began to ring constantly. When I looked out, my family was there. I made the decision to let the bell ring for a few minutes while I pretended to be away from home. However, rather than going, my father became irate, claiming to be aware that I was at home and insisting that I speak with them. I'm not sure how he deduced that, but I didn't respond. He insisted that I open the door and continued to shout outside for a few more minutes. He and Mickey eventually began pressing as hard as they could against the door, and I was worried that they may shatter it. All I could do was stand up and open the door. I was already somewhat irritated by that point. I didn't want to have to contact the police, and I had been quite clear that I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want to cope with the hassle that would come with living in a great neighborhood. I strongly informed them that I had already made up my decision and that I didn't want to talk to them when I opened the door. I refused to assist them. It wasn't even about personal grudges at this point. All I wanted was to avoid them, and they had to accept that. I wasn't going to change my opinion by coming to my house. On the contrary, it only made me feel worse. Mickey begged me, but my parents remained silent. He claimed that because he didn't think it was just for him to pay child support for a child that wasn't his, he truly needed my assistance. I should help him, he said, because we are relatives. That's when I started laughing. We had been anything but family for the past 5 years, but now they wanted to behave like we were family again just because they needed my assistance. I curtly informed Mickey that we couldn't merely act like family when it suited them. I told them to go since I no longer regarded them as family. My parents went crazy right away, so I suppose they didn't appreciate my tone. My mom informed me that I had no right to talk to them in that manner since, in spite of everything, they were still my parents and had reared me, therefore I owed them everything. My dad had began ranting at me. I retaliated, of course, and a few minutes later we were yelling at each other again. We might have continued much longer if it weren't for Mickey. Fortunately, he was able to stop them both. Then, unexpectedly, he turned to face me and started begging. He acknowledged that he wasn't always the best brother, but he stated that if I helped him now, he would owe me a huge debt. Mickey said that he didn't really want children and that it wasn't right for him to provide for an unfaithful wife and an unborn child. It all seemed dramatic, but I could tell he was desperate and really depended on me when he said that I was the only person who could stop this injustice. But after the argument I'd just had with my parents, I had no interest in assisting any of them at the moment. I threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. I closed the door after that. In the end, they did depart. After this, I really don't have anything more to say to them, so even though I'm not sure whether I did the right thing, I hope they leave me alone. I'm sorry for Mickey. Perhaps our relationship would have been completely different if our parents had been better parents. I'm not claiming Mickey was faultless or flawless, but I can't help but feel sad for him given his current predicament. He could have completely averted this situation if he had simply paid attention to my warnings. I still believe that our parents destroyed his life. Mickey might have been able to persuade me to assist if they hadn't treated me so terribly. However, the harm has already been done. Even though I genuinely hope Mickey is exempt from paying child support since, morally speaking, Na doesn't deserve it, I will not be assisting him. That's saying something because I hate Na even more than I hate my parents. I firmly believe that it is unethical for Mickey to be required to pay child support for a child that is not his. I'll stay out of it, but I hope things work out for him. Third update. Since my last update, which was 3 months ago, not much noteworthy has transpired. My parents have made multiple attempts to contact me, but they have yet to offer an apology. Rather, I've received emails informing me that my refusal to assist Mickey is a grave error. As if that would convince me otherwise, they even admitted that they are embarrassed to refer to me as their son. They were continuously disparaging me in their emails, and eventually it became tiresome, so I stopped reading them. They kept making new accounts solely to irritate me, not because I hadn't tried to block them, I very certainly had. In any case, I found it easy to overlook because I didn't give a damn. After a while, I became preoccupied with my job once more and stopped caring about it. I just learned about Mickey's custody battle and my parents via a cousin whose mother is close to my parents. This cousin and I have always gotten along, so she has been keeping me informed even though I haven't been in contact with most of my relatives. She informed me last week that Mickey would not be required to pay child support. Jacob has made the decision to become a father to his child after much deliberation. Jacob wasn't ready to commit at first, but Na made it plain that she would leave him if he didn't take the initiative and become a father. As my brother predicted, Jacob had, of course, been in contact with her all along and had met his biological kid multiple times. Although he didn't want to commit to anything, he did have a bond with his son. I suppose he finally consented to her requirements because he was afraid of losing Na. I've heard that Jacob and Na intend to tie the knot as soon as her divorce is finalized. They have begun to accept all of Mickey's demands in an effort to move things forward more quickly. But I already know that Na won't make it through this since no relationship ever survives an ultimatum. In any case, that will be her karma, and I don't give a damn. The fact that Mickey is leaving this mess makes me pleased. I hope that we can get back together someday, but I don't think my parents will allow it to happen as long as they are here. However, I don't really care about it. These things no longer have an impact on me, and I'm content with my life. My stepmother burned my late mom's belongings while I was in the hospital, claiming my dad would approve because she was taking care of us. I am a 23-year-old woman who has spent many years in and out of the hospital due to a chronic condition that I have had since I was a young child. My 48-year-old father has always been incredibly encouraging and makes an effort to be present for me for any operations or treatments I need. I recently underwent major surgery, and I had a really difficult recovery. I spent roughly 2 weeks in the hospital, and it was incredibly difficult. Dad spent the majority of that time with me, but he had to go on a work trip a few days prior to my release. He travels all over the country for his profession as a business consultant, and sometimes he just can't escape it. I really understood his sincere apologies for not being there to pick me up from the hospital. In addition, my 45-year-old stepmother was expected to take care of things while he was away. To give you some context, I have never really gotten along with my stepmother. We've had a strained relationship since she married my dad when I was 16. I know she doesn't truly like me, but I still try to be polite. She has always made me feel as though I was interfering with her relationship with my dad by saying and doing things. She also believes that I resemble my mother, who died when I was 10, too much. By the way, my stepmother detests the fact that I resemble my mother since she believes it serves as a reminder to my dad of his former partner. Yes, I am aware that she sounds crazy. But ultimately, I accepted my dad's love for her, which is why I put up with a lot of her actions. I eventually returned home after being released from the hospital. Although I was tired, I was glad to be out of the hospital. When I initially entered my room, everything appeared to be as usual. I ended myself napping after lying on my bed to unwind. I realized something was wrong when I decided to tidy up my room a little after waking up. I quickly discovered that a lot of things were missing, like, really, a lot of things, but I suppose I was too tired to notice how empty my room appeared. I began to panic. Perhaps there had been a break-in, I reasoned. I began scurrying about the room, looking for anything that might still be there. I mean, I was still so weak after my operation that I could hardly stand, but I was desperate. Almost immediately, it became evident that everything missing was my mother's property. Among other nostalgic items, I had a number of letters Mom had written to me as a child, some framed pictures, and this old jewelry box of hers. Normally, they would remain on my nightstand or dresser, but on that particular day, they were all gone. Everything was gone when I looked in the storage room where we kept some of my mom's old belongings, including her clothing and a few antiques from her family. It was unbelievable to me. I went straight to my stepmother. I tried my best to remain composed around her. I inquired as to whether she had taken anything out of my room. She gave me this self-satisfied smile. She then nonchalantly informed me that I no longer had to worry about any of those things since she had taken care of some of my things. I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Although I was aware that my stepmother had always harbored animosity toward my mother, I repeatedly prayed that the only thing she had done was to store my mother's belongings in a storage facility farther away from our home. My stepmother kept smiling smugly when I asked her what she had done with my belongings. I finally lost it and began yelling at her to tell me what she had done. She then chuckled and informed me that she had set fire to everything that belonged to my mother. I was so stunned by that I quickly stopped talking. I was unable to even comprehend it. She simply stated that this was the best way for her and my dad to go on with their lives when I eventually got around to asking her why she would do something like that. She apparently claimed that my dad didn't require reminders of his former existence. I attempted to fight with her, telling her that my dad would not approve of her actions and that she had made the worst mistake of her life. She merely laughed at me and claimed to know him better than I did, adding that he would be pleased that she had destroyed my mother's belongings in order to maintain their relationship. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I could hardly talk because I was so unhappy and furious. I tried not to cry while I was trembling, but the tears just poured. I felt as though I was experiencing my mother's loss once more. It was unbelievable to me that someone could be so vicious. I simply couldn't stop thinking about what I had lost. I lost everything I had of my mother. That's when I got too weak. I was overburdened. I walked to my room, leaving my stepmother standing there. After crying for a long time, I made the decision to call my father. He was in the middle of a meeting, which was unfortunate for me. He sounded quite busy and preoccupied when he eventually responded. I made an effort to explain the situation to him, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. He hung up quickly after saying something about handling it when he came home. I was so powerless. The days that followed were the longest of my entire existence. My stepmother, who pretended that she had done nothing wrong, left me feeling alone, furious, and devastated in that house. She was careful to emphasize that she had done my dad a great favor. She insisted that my attachment to my mother's possessions was immature and that it was time for me to mature. Every chance she got, she made fun of me. I'm not sure how I survived those times, but I was able to wait for my dad to return. I was waiting for my dad when he returned from his trip. I repeated everything to him, and this time he paid attention. He didn't trust me at first. He believed that my stepmother was just playing a cruel practical joke or that there was some sort of miscommunication. However, when I showed him my room and our storage area, he turned pale upon seeing that everything was empty. The love of his life was my mother. At the age of 10, they had first met. My mom and dad's childhood possessions were among the many items my stepmother set on fire. Those things played a significant role in my dad's recollections with my mom, even though he had moved on and married my stepmother. He valued them greatly, therefore it was devastating to see them all gone. My stepmother tried to act as like it wasn't a huge thing when he confronted her. She even claimed that I had brainwashed my dad into believing it was significant when she noticed how upset he was becoming, even though she was only assisting him in moving on. My father went crazy. He's never been so furious in my life. One thing about my dad that you should know is that he's a fairly laid-back guy. You have to do a lot to make him mad. My stepmother was obviously afraid and did not anticipate that her behavior would make him angry. My father immediately informed her that he desired a divorce. He instructed her to get her belongings and depart. My dad told my stepmother that the house was his long before he ever met her, despite her attempts to claim that it was also hers and that he couldn't evict her. He also threatened to call his lawyer to have her removed from the property if she didn't leave within the next 24 hours. My dad and I mourned the loss of my mom's possessions together, and my stepmother stormed out of the house. In a fit of rage, my father chose to ruin my stepmother's life. My dad sued her for emotional anguish and property destruction after speaking with his attorney. Her behavior upset him, and he wanted her to pay the price. Naturally, my stepmother lost her mind. She was shocked to learn that my father was supporting me. She persisted in pointing the finger at me, saying that I had influenced him and made him turn against her. My dad, though, wasn't having any of it. The fact that she had ruined the final mementos of his first marriage and the woman he really loved infuriated him. He was no longer even able to look at her. The litigation is currently underway, and the divorce is ongoing. Although my stepmother is battling it, she has little chance of success. She has been attempting to play the victim and has claimed that my attachment to the past destroyed everything. Some of my stepmother's family members have contacted me and accused me of being immature for meddling in their affairs. I am aware that I done nothing improper. My stepmother would have suffered the same repercussions if my dad had eventually learned about my mom's missing possessions. Even still, her family members blame me for her predicament and constantly texting me about how hard she's been going. My mind is messed up by the grief I'm experiencing, even though I know I'm not to blame. All I need is someone who is not involved in this mess to assure me that I done nothing wrong. Is it rude of me to inform my father that my stepmother destroyed everything belonging to my deceased mother? First update. Hi everyone. Because of the tremendous escalation, I wanted to provide you with an update. I was still in disbelief over what my stepmother had done when I initially commented, but I can assure you that this case is turning into a nightmare for her, and I honestly don't feel sorry for her. It's getting worse for her than she could have ever imagined, and my dad isn't holding back. He's determined to make her pay. As it turns out, my stepmother had no idea what she was getting herself into, and the legal procedure has been proceeding swiftly. She burnt some quite precious items in addition to sentimental mementos. Antique keepsakes inherited from my mother's side of the family made up the majority of the objects she destroyed. They belonged to a collection that had been passed down through the years. A few items, such as a set of antique jewelry and an old watch, were valued at thousands of dollars. Even if that is bad for her, it gets worse because those antiques were covered by insurance. My mom's family had insurance policies linked to the heirloom's worth since they took such good care of them. My dad had even more clout in the litigation after he understood this. In addition to mental distress allegations, my stepmother is also dealing with a significant property destruction case that includes concrete proof of monetary loss. She must reimburse the full value of these products because they were destroyed, and let's just say she lacks the funds to do so. She is currently being pursued by the insurance company as well. They have begun their own investigation since my dad made a claim, and they are fully supporting him. My stepmother is unable to escape this one. She was completely mistaken if she believed she could simply destroy these items and leave. The lawyers for my dad have been keeping a close eye on everything and have ensured that she is in a tight spot. It's really cruel to see, but she deserves all of it for everything she's done. Thank God my dad was astute enough to have her sign a prenuptial agreement before they were married, and the divorce is proceeding swiftly as well. Since that means she won't be taking much with her, that has been a tremendous assistance. Initially, she attempted to challenge it, but her attorney just informed her that she had no case. Since the prenuptial agreement is unchangeable, my dad will keep all of his possessions from before and after they were married. That means my stepmother won't have access to any of my dad's money, a fancy house, or a fancy automobile. I am fully aware of her panic because she has been blowing up my phone every day. She manages to text me again after I block her. She screams about how I destroyed her life in these lengthy messages that she sends me. Her constant attempts to portray herself as the victim are almost comical. She says she's paying the price for something that wasn't her fault since I persuaded my dad into divorcing her. She keeps screaming that everything is breaking apart because I couldn't let it go and that she was only attempting to assist by burning my mom's belongings. She has also been telling me about how her life is falling apart, and to be honest, I don't even care or have any sympathy for her. People in her social circle are apparently beginning to turn away from her. It has been devastating to lose her reputation because she has always placed a great deal of importance on appearances. She used to have elegant brunches and dinner parties, but now her so-called friends have entirely abandoned her. I've heard that many people are supporting my dad, because they understand how much my mom's possessions matter to him. Her sob story about doing it for the family isn't convincing. She is already feeling the effects of the financial impact. She is losing control of the lifestyle she was so proud of as the lawsuit continues and the prenup prevents her from receiving any of my dad's assets. My dad's business even rented her a beautiful car, which he canceled as soon as the divorce papers were filed. She has been complaining to me that she looks like a pathetic loser, because she must utilize public transportation everywhere, and that I am solely to blame for her predicament. She's desperate, based on what she's been telling me, since she can't stop messaging. She is looking for a new location to live, but she lacks the funds for a lifestyle that is comparable to what she is accustomed to. She could certainly live with something less expensive, but she refuses to live, quote, below what she deserves. She even attempted to use guilt tripping to persuade my dad to let her stay in our home until she recovered, but he refused. She is upset about everything, including the house, the litigation, and the prenuptial agreement. I always get a text saying that I'm to blame whenever things goes wrong for her. She is truly going crazy. According to a mutual acquaintance, she has been pleading for favors and attempting to win people over to her cause, but nobody is retaliating. The majority of people don't want to interact with her since they are aware of what she did. To be honest, after everything she did to me, it's kind of satisfying to see her crumble. She believed that she could simply enter, set my mother's belongings on fire, and pretend that she had done us a favor. She is currently losing everything. My dad, however, is surviving all of this rather nicely. He may still be grieving over what transpired, in my opinion. He cherished the items my mother left behind because he loved her so much. In addition, he abruptly lost my stepmother, who had become his new love interest. Even though my stepmother is still alive, he is quite angry and hurt by how things have ended out. He is using all of his hurt and rage to make sure my stepmother is held accountable for her actions. His attorneys are doing a fantastic job, and it seems like we're getting closer to finding some sort of resolution every day. It's clearly obvious that the case will destroy her finances, but I'm not sure how long it will last. She will be left with nothing as a result of the property destruction claims, the insurance company pursuing her, and the ongoing divorce. For the time being, things are unquestionably going in the correct direction, but I'll keep you all informed as more develops. Knowing that justice is being done makes me happy. Second update. Hello everybody. It's time for another update, and the situation just becomes more bizarre. My stepmother dug herself a deeper hole than I thought she could, but here we are. With claims of emotional distress and property devastation, the lawsuit was already going quite badly for her, but it has now gotten even worse. My dad's attorneys discovered something significant during the lawsuit's discovery period, which is essentially when all the material is gathered. It turns out that for years, my stepmother has been gradually siphoning off funds from my dad's company. She apparently had access to several of the company accounts, and when she took money out of them, she said it was for costs or domestic necessities. When the lawyers began reviewing the divorce's finances, they discovered all these strange transfers, but my dad trusted her enough to not question it. She was stealthily extracting hundreds here and there, so we're not talking about little sums either. She funded her lavish lifestyle with this money. Since he had no idea how much luxury goods cost, my dad was never informed about how much she had been spending on them. He assumed my stepmother would be reasonable about her expenditures, but he was completely mistaken. My dad was incensed when he learned. The last straw for him was learning that she had been stealing from him, even though he already felt deceived by her burning my mom's possessions. Her actions were not merely cunning, they were outright dishonesty. She had been taking money out of his accounts for her own use in order to maintain her extravagant lifestyle, and she had no claim to that money. She is currently dealing with a serious fraud charge in addition to the property destruction case. Things are becoming really serious as my dad faces charges of embezzlement. My dad isn't having any of it with her lawyer frantically attempting to work out a settlement. Instead of settling, he wants her to take full responsibility for her actions. To be honest, I don't hold it against him and, in fact, I'm somewhat proud of him. She has gotten away with a lot for a long time, but now everything is finally coming back to haunt her. At this stage, the case covers all of the money she stole in addition to the psychological harm and property damage. The case against her only gets stronger, and my dad's attorneys are doing a fantastic job. I'm shocked every time I learn something new about this situation. Even though I always knew she was cunning and self-centered, I didn't realize how shady she was. She was quite skilled at maintaining appearances and behaving like the ideal wife while surreptitiously stealing money from my dad. It's repulsive to consider. She now faces the prospect of going to jail. Money embezzlement is a serious offense, and if my dad's case continues as it is, she may be imprisoned. It's absurd to consider that she was acting untouchably only a few months ago, and that she is now embroiled in a major legal crisis. She cannot argue her way out of this because the money she stole is well documented, and my dad's legal team is working to have the fraud charges upheld. Her situation just gets worse with each piece of evidence they uncover. No one is providing her an easy way out, despite her constant attempts to strike agreements. She continues to blow up my phone and blame me for everything, of course. She insists that none of this would have occurred if I hadn't betrayed my father. Now, it's really quite pitiful. While she is the one who stole from him and destroyed the things that were important to him, she is denying any responsibility and pretending to be the victim. She goes on a tirade about how I destroyed her life every day. To be honest, I no longer even glance at her texts. However, I must admit that I am relieved that justice is at last being done. Seeing her face the repercussions after everything she did to my mom, my dad, and myself feels like the closure I didn't realize I needed. I feel both content and as though I'm in a different reality as I watch her fall apart and realize that she's losing everything. At this stage, the divorce is essentially finalized and is still proceeding. My dad will keep all of his assets, and the prenuptial agreement has made things much easier. Even though my stepmother is still fighting for whatever she can, she has little power because of the fraud charges that are looming over her. I don't know how long the fraud case will take to go to court, but based on what the attorneys are saying, she doesn't have a good chance. This new fraud case has completely changed the subject, yet the property destruction lawsuit is still pending. This time, she can lose her freedom rather than just money. I've been making an effort to keep my attention on my own recovery in the meanwhile. It's difficult to avoid getting sucked into everything that's going on, even while I'm still recovering from surgery. Seeing her finally receive what she deserves is helping me get through this very taxing circumstance. In any case, that's where we are at the moment. In summary, my stepmother is facing serious legal issues, the divorce is nearly complete, and my father is making sure she doesn't receive any more money than she is due. For the time being, it seems like we're finally getting near to some true justice, but I'll keep you all informed as things develop. Thank you very much for your support, it is really appreciated. Third update. Hello everybody. Almost 7 months have passed since my last post, but I'm here with the last part of this whole nightmare. Right off the start, I'll give you the spoiler. The legal proceedings are finally over. Let me now explain the specifics. Let me start with the positive. The court decided in my dad's and my favor on every point. The judge wasn't kidding around, and every single thing we said was true. My stepmother has been compelled to reimburse my dad's firm for every dime she embezzled. In addition, the court awarded her significant damages for damaging my mother's possessions. The entire cost of the damages was staggering. She will be totally broke for a very long time as a result of it. Her opulent lifestyle is over. She no longer owns pricey cars, beautiful purses, or lavish holidays. Officially, she has reached her lowest point. The divorce was equally brutal and ended at the same time as the lawsuit. My stepmother attempted one more dirty trick during the divorce proceedings. She claimed that my dad had emotionally abused her during their marriage, which is why she was forced to steal from him. She portrayed herself as a neglected, impoverished woman who only took money to make ends meet. It was unbelievable. Fortunately, my father was ready. Her accusations were totally demolished by his attorneys. Throughout their marriage, they had a ton of evidence that my stepmother was enjoying the good life on his cash. She spent the majority of her money on pricey spa treatments, luxury clothing, and vacations. Not exactly what you'd call survival essentials, according to numerous receipts. Her sob story didn't convince the judge at all. Actually, it backfired horribly. The court viewed it as merely another attempt to influence the system and failed to find any compassion. Her credibility plummeted, which only served to exacerbate the appearance of her fraud case. Regarding the deception, she will undoubtedly face severe repercussions. The prosecutors wouldn't budge when she attempted to negotiate a reduced sentence or any kind of compromise. She was accused of embezzlement, and although she was fortunate to avoid jail time by entering into a plea agreement, she must now pay restitution in addition to the damages from the civil lawsuit. She will also be subject to the court's supervision for some time because she is on probation for a few years. The nicest part was that our local news featured the fraud case, which was likely the last straw for her. Everyone was able to view all of her unclean laundry. She was portrayed as a sophisticated, well-to-do socialite, but she has now been revealed to be a thief and a phony. I must admit that watching her be put down so openly was quite satisfying. Now that everyone is aware of her true identity, she no longer acts as though I am beneath her, as she did for years. She has been attempting to start again since the court decisions, but it doesn't seem like it's working well. When she first started looking for job, nobody in our community would even consider hiring her. I believe she attempted to relocate to a different district in an attempt to start again, but she isn't doing well there either. She currently lives in a small apartment and works at a minimum wage job that she obviously despises, at least based on the messages she occasionally sends me. Yes, she continues to text me. Despite everything, she still blames me for wrecking her life and sends me sour notes every few weeks. By now, it's almost comical. You took from my dad and destroyed my mom's belongings, and now you're the victim, lady? Yes, all right. I tend to ignore her, but occasionally I can't help but laugh at how naive she seems. I'm doing better myself. I'm recovering both psychologically and physically, albeit it's taken a while. My recuperation is about finished. I feel lighter mentally. I feel like I can finally breathe again now that this whole ordeal is finished, even if there were times when I felt completely overwhelmed. I still have bad days, especially when I consider that I will never see my mom again and that her possessions will never be replaced. However, it gives me some comfort to know that my stepmother actually suffered the repercussions of her behavior. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped and encouraged me during this. During some of my lowest points, your encouraging words and guidance truly got me through. You have no idea how much it meant to me to know that I had support when it seemed like everything was crumbling. That's all for now. I'm hoping that this will be the last update I have to write on her. I'm permanently ending this phase of my life. Everyone, be careful. I stopped supporting my brother's family after he said, "No place for losers." That's why I wasn't invited to Christmas. Now he's losing it. In fact, I was excited for Christmas this year. I wasn't rushing to finish everything at the last minute for once. I had purchased gifts for my parents, my brother Jacob, his wife Kelly, and their children before the first week of December. I even purchased extra presents in case there were any unannounced visitors. I have no idea why, but I had the impression that this year would be successful. I was really taken aback when my mom opened the door and said, "We don't want you here this year," as I was standing on my parents' front porch holding a bag of wrapped gifts in each hand. At first, I assumed it was a strange joke. I began to chuckle, but Jacob's voice interrupted her from behind. His words, "This is no place for losers. You're really starting to wear on all of us." I simply stood there and gazed at her. My dad was in the background, staring nervously everywhere except at me without saying a word. Despite her uneasy appearance, my mother didn't retreat. And Jacob was utterly arrogant. I had a flurry of feelings, including humiliation, rage, and perplexity. However, I managed to remain composed. "Fine, if that's how you feel," I said, nodding, and then I made my way back to my car. Something inside of me changed as I sat in the driveway and gazed at the bags of gifts in the passenger seat. No place for losers? Tired of me? From where did this originate? I suspected Jacob was responsible, but I was unable to determine why. Over the years, I had shown him and his family nothing but generosity. I had paid for his children's summer camp tuition, school supplies, and even his mortgage when he needed it most. And now, suddenly, I wasn't invited to Christmas? I made the decision not to go just yet. To gain some answers, I was heading back to the door. I returned after leaving the gifts in the car. As though they hadn't anticipated my return, my parents were still standing there, chatting in low voices. Jacob was pretending nothing had happened as he sat on the couch and browsed through his phone. I chose not to knock. "What's going on?" I said as I entered. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Without raising his eyes from his phone, Jacob smiled. "You really don't get it, do you? You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." Stunned, I gazed at him. "What are you talking about? I've spent hundreds on presents for your kids. They have more presents in the car than anyone else. Last year, you did more. This year, it's like you don't care." "It's embarrassing for us, honestly," Jacob said, turning to face me at last. I looked to my parents, thinking they would say something, perhaps defend me or warn Jacob that he was acting inappropriately. Rather than that, my mother smiled awkwardly and remarked, "But you just bought a new car. You found money for it." I wasn't even sure how to react for a moment. "The car is on credit," I stated, maintaining a steady tone. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacob's kids? They're not my responsibility." Jacob leaned back on the couch and declared, "You're the one who makes the most money," as though everything had been explained. "We're a family. Families help each other. You've always done that." His wife, Kelly, was sitting calmly in the corner when I glanced at her. Her face was hot, and she was looking down at her hands without saying anything. It was as though she wished to vanish. I questioned, "Is that your reasoning? Because I've been generous in the past, I'm now obligated to do so forever? And if I don't, I'm a loser." Jacob gave a shrug. "If the shoe fits." For me, that was it. I shook my head and stepped back. I turned to face my parents and said, "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." Turning to Jacob, I said, "Enjoy your Christmas. And good luck with those presents, because this loser is done financing your life." Without waiting for a response, I left. I gripped the wheel more tightly than I had to and drove silently home. I was unable to comprehend it. Was I the villain in this situation? For years, I had gone above and beyond for my family, always helping Jacob when he needed it and ensuring that his children never suffered because of his financial difficulties. And now I was a loser for not doing enough, in addition to being unwelcome at Christmas. I spent some time sitting in the driveway after I arrived home, staring at nothing. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the bag of gifts that was still in the van. I had spent weeks choosing the ideal items, considering what my parents would value and what the children would enjoy. And for what? I wasn't supposed to be here? It became more apparent to me as I gave it more thought. This went beyond Christmas and gifts. I had been too blind, or perhaps too willing, to notice that this had been developing for years. The fact was that Jacob had always relied on me. He and Kelly had a difficult financial beginning to their marriage. He struggled to maintain a consistent job, and Kelly's part-time job hardly provided for their basic needs. With the assumption that it would only be for a short time, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, I volunteered to help. Once, when they were in danger of being evicted, I assisted with the rent. Later, when their second child was born, I helped with childcare. A little while became years, however. Jacob always called me first when he was having a bad day. To be honest, I always said yes because I cared for his kids, not because I had to. I didn't want to see my brother and his family suffer, and I didn't want them to be without. In retrospect, I saw that I had produced this dynamic. Jacob relied on me too easily because of me. It became entitlement somewhere along the line and ceased to be thankfulness. The final straw was being excluded from my own family's Christmas celebration tonight because I didn't do enough. I decided I was done when I woke up the following morning with more clarity. Don't help Jacob any longer. No more incessant presents to compensate for his inefficiency. He could decide for himself if he wanted his children to have the items I had given them. Making the choice wasn't simple. Not only would I lose my brother's financial support, but I would also jeopardize my connection with him, his kids, and possibly even my parents. However, I couldn't continue to be treated more like an ATM than a brother and son. They didn't contact me, and I didn't contact anyone. Perhaps they received the message, I thought. However, I should have known Jacob wouldn't take it so lightly. New Year's Eve was spent in complete silence. No texts, no phone calls, nothing. My parents, Jacob, and even Kelly didn't get back to me. I was all alone over the holidays for the first time in years. Although I didn't anticipate them contacting me, it was an odd sensation when midnight passed and my phone was still silent. I'll admit that I considered phoning, but every time I did, I thought of Jacob's sneer and his statement, "No place for losers." I had been the one keeping things together for years, and they had the gall to treat me as though I were disposable. I would give them distance if that was what they desired. I started to notice a change by the middle of January. Kelly has always been a reserved individual who shied away from confrontation. However, she unexpectedly texted me one evening. It was succinct and direct. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacob won't hear it from me, but I thought you should know." Unsure of how to react, I sat for a while looking at my phone. The fact that someone in the family recognized things for what they were was comforting, on the one hand. However, Kelly's apology suddenly seemed like too little, too late because she had not spoken that evening. At last, I responded, "I appreciate it, Kelly, but this isn't something I can just move on from." I didn't mind that she didn't continue the topic. The surprise visit. Then, in early February, Jacob unexpectedly arrived at my residence. When I heard the knock on the door, I was in the middle of a work meeting. I initially disregarded it as I wasn't expecting anyone. However, the knocking continued. Jacob was there when I eventually opened the door, and he looked more unkempt and irritated than I had ever seen him. Before I could stop him, he remarked, "We need to talk," and went inside. I folded my arms. "What's this about?" He was direct and concise. "You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again." I laughed because I couldn't believe he meant it, not because I thought it was amusing. Helping out? You mean pay for your life? I told you, I'm done with that. He gave me a scowl. You're the one with the money. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kelly's trying to keep it together, but we can't do it without your help. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're a grown man, Jacob. You have a wife and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to solve your problems. He retorted. You've always helped before. Why are you being so selfish now? Selfish? I said again. You want to talk about being selfish? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here asking for more? You've got some nerve, Jacob. I interrupted him by raising a hand before he could say anything further. We're done here. I'm not giving you another dime, and I don't want to hear from you again until you figure out how to act like an adult. He glared at me as he stood there for a while before hurriedly leaving. I assumed that would be the last of it for a while once Jacob stormed out. He would grumble to my parents, but he would soon realize that I wouldn't give up. I was mistaken. I received a call from an unfamiliar number 2 days later. I wouldn't have answered normally, but I felt compelled to do so. Hello? A man's voice said. Is this Michael? Yeah, who's this? This is Mark Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss them? I went cold. An attorney? What are the financial issues? In an unduly courteous tone, he stated, I can't go into detail over the phone. But it involves financial contributions you've made to your brother Jacob and his family. Specifically, your use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion? I was at a loss for words. There were a lot of options in my head, but none of them were good. Had Jacob borrowed money under my name? Was he up to no good with my information? Or was this a last-ditch effort to scare me into handing him money once more? Who's your client? I inquired at last. There was a moment's silence. I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now, but I assure you, this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more of an investigation. I consented to a meeting against my better judgment. My curiosity overcame me, and I couldn't get rid of the impression that this was more than just Jacob being himself. The following day, I had no idea what to anticipate as I entered Mark Dawson's office. But he dropped a bombshell as soon as I sat down. He pushed a packet across the desk toward me and stated, Kelly is the client I'm representing. I was so surprised that I blinked. Kelly? Why would she need a lawyer? Mark studied me intently while folding his hands. She thinks Jacob's been using the money you've given him over the years inappropriately. She has reason to believe he's been hiding money, from her and from you. I felt sick to my stomach. Hiding money? What do you mean? Copies of bank statements, receipts, and what appeared to be screenshots of text messages were visible when he opened the folder. She suspects that Jacob has been taking your financial contributions and funneling them into a separate account. Based on what she found, he may have been using the money for gambling and other personal expenses instead of supporting his family. I gazed incredulously at the paperwork. You're saying all those times I helped him with bills, with his kids' school stuff, that money never went to them? Mark gave a serious nod. It seems that way. Kelly discovered this recently and came to me because she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to involve you at first, but given the circumstances, she thought you should know. What I was hearing was unbelievable. All along, Jacob had been deceiving me by spending money I believed would benefit his family on unspecified expenses. For not recognizing it sooner, I wasn't sure if I should feel deceived, angry, or just foolish. My voice was strained as I questioned, Does Kelly have proof? Take a look for yourself. Mark nodded and moved the folder closer to me. The proof. I looked over the papers. There were withdrawals from Jacob's account, significant amounts moving to a different account in his name, and transfers from my account to his, which corresponded with the times I had assisted him with emergencies. I observed transactions from that account, including visits to pricey dining establishments, internet gambling sites, and even a few hotel stays. Unbelievable, I shook my head and mumbled. And Kelly knew about this? She only recently discovered the second account, Mark clarified. She had suspicions for a while, but she didn't have access to his banking information. Until she stumbled across some bank statements he'd left out, she didn't have proof. That's when she contacted me. I tried to absorb everything as I sat back. Does she want me to do anything? Press charges or something? Mark gave a headshake. Not at this point. She's more focused on protecting herself and the children, but she thought you should know in case Jacob tries to manipulate you further. I laughed resentfully. Well, he already tried. He showed up at my house a few days ago demanding that I start helping again. Mark looked at me irritably. That goes along with what Kelly told me. It seems Jacob is feeling the pressure now that your financial support has stopped. He may be in even deeper trouble than Kelly knows. As I gazed at the folder, my thoughts were racing. A part of me wanted to go to Jacob's house and confront him, but I also knew that would only make him feel good because he had irritated me. I said, "What's Kelly up to?" instead. Mark paused before responding. She's considering her options. She wants to make sure she and the kids are safe, financially and otherwise. If Jacob's behavior escalates, she may file for separation or take other legal action. I was more affected by hearing this than I had anticipated. Kelly had always given off the impression of being a gentle, devoted person who would always be there for Jacob. I could tell how horrible things had gone if even she was eager to leave. With a mix of feelings, angry at Jacob, sad for Kelly and the children, and guilty for not seeing sooner how far this had gone, I thanked Mark for his time and walked out of the office. Above all, though, I experienced an odd sense of relaxation. This was the first time in years that I wasn't bearing Jacob's burden. And now that I was aware of the reality, I would never again allow him to control me. The request, I couldn't stop thinking about all I had just discovered after leaving the lawyer's office, the gaming, the hidden money, and Kelly subtly plotting her next move. I was in the center of my family's drama, which was similar to a soap opera. I stayed away for the next few days. I didn't give my parents a call, and I didn't get in touch with Jacob either. However, it seems that he didn't like the quiet because one evening, as I was ready to have supper, his name appeared on my phone. I thought about leaving it on voicemail, but I felt compelled to answer it. "What do you want, Jacob?" He wasted no time at all. He said, "We need to talk." In a strained, almost desperate voice. "You said something to Kelly, didn't you?" I arched an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act foolish," he yelled. "She's been acting weird since Christmas, and now she's bringing up lawyers and separation. I know you've been putting ideas in her head." I couldn't contain my laughter. "You think I'm the problem? You're the one who lied to her, hid money, and gambled it away? If she's tired of your crap, that's on you. Not me." After a pause, Jacob eventually spoke the words, "You don't know what you're talking about." I responded, "Oh, I think I do." As my rage boiled up. "Kelly told me everything, the secret account, the gambling, the money you've been wasting while I've been breaking my back trying to help you. You're a joke, Jacob." I interrupted him before he could finish his shout, saying, "Here's the thing," I interrupted him. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. "You've used me for the last time. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. If Kelly leaves you, that's on you. And if you try to drag me into this mess again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to." The backlash was quick, and Kelly called me the following day. "Has Jacob given you a call?" With caution, she asked. "Yes," I replied. He wasn't content. "Has something taken place?" "I confronted him about the gambling and the hidden account," she said after hesitating. "He acknowledged some of it, but he is still making an effort to downplay it." "Are you all right?" I inquired. Despite not hearing it, she answered, "I'm fine." But she was sick of defending him. "The children are worthy of better." I knew things were terrible between them, but hearing her say that felt like the beginning of the end, and it impacted me harder than I thought it would. "Whatever you decide to do, you have my support," I replied. "Thank you," she said softly. "And I apologize for everything. The way we treated you over Christmas wasn't fair. I ought to have spoken up sooner." We spoke for a while, and when we hung up, I felt a weird sense of closure. Although Jacob had ruined our relationship, Kelly and the children weren't my enemies, and I wouldn't be angry with her if she had the courage to confront him. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that Jacob wasn't finished causing trouble. Kelly sent me a brief text message a few weeks later, consisting of only 3 words. "We're going today." She told me she was moving to another state with the kids while Jacob was out of town on a business trip, which I figured was just another excuse for gambling, and that she had packed up their belongings, rented a moving van, and left without telling him, at least not until she had everything sorted out legally. I called her right away. "I just couldn't stay any longer," she stated gently. "I can't keep pretending this is normal." "What about everything, even the rent?" Sincerely interested in how she was doing, I inquired. "I was hoping you could help me with that," Just for a little while, she said after a pause. As much as I hate to ask. Say no more, I said. I'll take care of it. So, yes, I did end up helping her and the kids, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally doing the right thing and not being used. When Jacob returned home to find the house deserted, he naturally went completely mad and called me to vent about how I had ruined his life and turned Kelly against him. After letting him vent for a while, I said, perhaps this wouldn't have occurred if you had spent more time as a husband and father and less time gaming. I hung up after saying, but hey, good luck with that. The children are adjusting to their new school, Kelly has secured a stable career, and she is at last beginning to feel in charge of her life again. I've heard that Jacob continues to blame everyone but himself, but in all honesty, it's no longer my problem. Then, if you can call it that, you have your happy ending. Am I the asshole for declining to celebrate Christmas with my boyfriend's family and not inviting him to my family's celebration? Original post. For context, I, 19F, am from the United States and currently a second-year university student in the UK. My boyfriend, 23M, is British, recently finished his master's, and is now working. We've been dating for 10 months, and he's my first boyfriend. He's been nothing but understanding, kind, and supportive throughout our relationship. I've met his parents and siblings twice, and both times were wonderful. His mom even told him she thinks I'm the one. In late November, he asked if I'd like to spend Christmas with his family. He said everyone would love to have me there, and I thought it was sweet, but I declined. I've been feeling homesick and wanted to spend Christmas, a holiday that means a lot to me, with my family in South Dakota. When I told him, he seemed aloof for a few days. I went to his flat later to reassure him that I'd love to visit his family another time, but for me, Christmas is a family holiday. I now realize how that would have sounded dismissive. He looked hurt and asked, "Do you still love me, and aren't I your family?" I reassured him that I do love him, and things seemed fine after that. About a week later, he surprised me by showing me a flight he'd booked to South Dakota for Christmas. Flights to South Dakota are expensive, especially internationally, and while the gesture was touching, I thought it was impulsive and unwise. I told him it wasn't a good idea. For the first time, he got really upset, accusing me of not caring about him, not being serious about us, and thinking only of myself, all of which are untrue. I love him and value our relationship deeply. Knowing he was speaking out of hurt, I asked him to take a walk to cool off. When he returned, I explained that he meant everything to me, but I wasn't ready for him to meet my family. To be honest, I'm nervous about how my family would react. I'm white, he's Arab, and my family in rural South Dakota is not exposed to diversity. They've made ignorant, racist comments in the past. While they'd likely be polite to his face, I fear they might say something offensive or jokingly inappropriate. They also assume Arab equals Muslim, even though he's Christian. This ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want to put him in a situation where he might be hurt. I didn't tell him any of this though. Instead, I said I felt it was too soon to bring someone home, as in my family, that's often a precursor to engagement, which is true. He asked if he wasn't good enough, and I reassured him that he's perfect. He then mentioned that the tickets were non-refundable. I started crying, apologizing for wasting his money and saying how much I wanted him there, just not right now. He asked me to leave and said he needed space. I flew back home nearly a week ago, and since then, we've only had brief phone conversations. He still texts me, "I love you," and "good night," but he's clearly distant and hurt. I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix this or reassure him. So, AITA? Verdict, asshole. Editor's note, OOP received mixed reactions of YTAs and NTAs. YTA was based on the details where OOP was not clearing up regarding racism issues from her family and their background. NTA was for what OOP did as her relationship isn't even a year yet. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. YTA. Your family is pretty racist and you might as well tell him that now. Their reaction is going to be the same if you brought him there now or 5 years from now. Your intent is selfish in nature. You're not protecting him. You're protecting yourself from the criticism you're going to get. He's hurt now, wait till he meets your parents and realizes you kept such a massive thing a secret. OOP, my immediate family, mom, dad, and sister, are very open and totally fine with me dating him. It's my extended family, grandma, aunts, uncles, and cousins I am extremely worried about. Commenter 2. No one is an asshole IMO, but you've both made big errors. Buying a non-refundable international flight without telling you is very unwise, like you said. But you're not being a good partner by hiding the truth about your family from him. You're 19, so I'm not gonna say YTA, but this is an asshole move. He deserves to know your true motivations. I'm sure he would understand if you just explained it kindly. Nearly everyone has experiences with ignorant family. Did you even tell your family about where he's from though? Oop. My entire family knows his race. My immediate family, parents and sister, are in full support and it doesn't bother them at all. My extended family, grandma, aunts, uncles and cousins, have already made racist remarks about him, most of them they tried to pass off as jokes. Commenter 3. Do you push back against that? Have you made it clear to them that this is serious, and they need to cut it out? Unless you're planning to go low contact with your family and live in the UK full time, this isn't going to end well. Trying to just push the meeting off into the future. Oop. My boyfriend and I want to live together in the UK once I graduate. My family doesn't know this yet, and I think this would be another reason to get mad at him. They were already livid about me going to another country for uni. As for their racism, I have told them I didn't appreciate it, but most of the comments I have heard through my sister after they happened. Commenter 4. Bold of him to book non-refundable plane tickets without talking to you. Pretty huge red flag. TBH. You've been together 10 months, he needs to chill the fuck out. This seems controlling and clingy. When you get back you need to be honest with him that you weren't sure your family would behave, and also that you felt him buying tickets was presumptive and moving too fast. You're 19? You don't need to rush things and he needs to respect your boundaries. OP. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. Update 1. My boyfriend, 23M, and I, 19F, have been dating for 10 months now. He's from the UK where I study at university, and I am currently back in the USA for winter break. I made a horrible mistake about how I handled his invitation to Christmas and refusing to let him come to mine, in another Reddit post of mine. Yesterday, I decided to call him and try to fix things, since what I did was so wrong. I explained my family's issues with racism, he's Jordanian and I'm white, and how I was wanting to protect him and trying to handle my family's problems before he gets introduced. I acknowledged that I should have told him, and handled it poorly, but would be honest with him from now on. I also told him that I had a conversation with my family about my relationship, and told them any racist behavior from their end would be completely unacceptable. Initially, he was understanding of my situation. He said my family didn't change the way he felt or viewed me, he was glad I was honest, and he apologized for his reactions earlier. After a while, he said that after what happened, we should lay some ground rules for each person in our relationship. I thought it was going to be things like honesty, trust, consideration, etc. Instead, he literally gave me things I must do in order for this relationship to be successful. Firstly, he told me I couldn't make decisions about things without him first. He basically said that relationships require sacrifice and compromise, and with big things such as Christmas, vacations, etc., I would need him to be okay with me doing these things. He said it was childish of me to be in the habit of doing whatever I want. Secondly, he told me I should distance myself from my family. I actually understand his reasoning here, considering how some of them are racist and not great people. I told him it was complicated, because I still love them despite this, which might make me just as bad? Not sure. I could still see where he was coming from, so I told him that if they ever made a racist comment about anyone in front of me, I would try to educate, and if that didn't work, I would distance myself. He then said I was playing middleman, and that was unfair to him. He said in a few years when we get married, I would have to make the choice. He finally told me he wants my location at all times, and wants me to go low contact with my male friends, most of which are gay anyways. I told him a lot of these rules seemed over the top, and in the most patronizing tone, he said, "You've never been in a relationship before and I'm older than you, so you should listen." The moment he said that I thought it didn't sound like him at all. Most of the time he is the most easygoing and relaxed person, so I couldn't believe it. I told him I didn't appreciate being talked to like a child, and if he wanted to be someone's father, then he should look for another person. He said that while he still forgave me for what I did earlier, my behavior was a testament to how immature I am. He then said we would continue this conversation another time and hung up, before we could even say goodbye. I feel like I partially caused this shift in his behavior by inadvertently making him insecure because of my refusal to let him come. Before this, he was honestly the last person I would ever consider getting insecure. He is very good looking, has a good career, and has always been confident, so I would never think he would act this way. It breaks my heart to know that I caused his actions, and want to know how I can convince him to let go of the rules so things can go back to the way they were. Or AITA for declining to follow the rules, and should I just follow them? Edit. I've been in this relationship for 10 months and really do love him. I told my friends the things he said and they've reiterated the points made here, but I guess it's hard for me to wrap my head around how he could go from such a good guy to this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but please be mindful that it's a lot more difficult for me to look at this objectively. Second edit. I appreciate everyone's comments and support. I have read every single comment and have thought about my relationship all afternoon. I cried when I realized I must end things. I will be texting him tomorrow morning and breaking up. Relevant comments. What is OOP's boyfriend's religion and his family's background in UK? OOP. He's not Muslim, but Christian, and his family has lived in the UK for 3 generations. Commenter 1, OP, I'm gonna be brutally honest here, even if I get downvoted to hell. Keep in mind I've read your first post. 1- He comes from a misogynistic culture, even if he's not Muslim. And it's showing. Why? He got angry cause you chose your birth family for Christmas, even though you guys haven't been together not even for 1 year. B. He inserted himself in your holidays with those tickets he bought. That was controlling and intrusive, not caring. Now, just because you didn't really told him why you didn't want him there, to not hurt him, he's taking that as a green flag to call you immature and assume an even more controlling stance. He's already used manipulation. Don't you love me? 2. There's plenty of suffering in your future if you remain with this guy. This has only just begun. Leave him and spare yourself or regret it later. The choice is yours. Oopie. Thank you, I have really absorbed everything you said, and what others have said. And am going to break things off. I am not sure if I should until I am back so it's in person or if I should just do it over the phone. It feels mean to just break up over the phone, and since our relationship is long-term, shouldn't I just do it when I get back? Does OOP live with her BF? And what do her friends think of the relationship altogether? OOP. We don't live with each other, sometimes I stay over at his flat, but I live in my uni accommodation. My friends, in the UK, really like him. We've been to the pub together as a huge group and it's always been a lot of fun. He's very kind and funny, so they've never had issues with him. My friends in the US didn't mind him until this entire thing happened. Since they never met him in person, I would send photos of us and SS's of our texts, and they all would say how in love we looked. Before this, he was legitimately perfect. I met him in my university's cafe where he bought me coffee and chatted with me up. He was so charismatic and made me feel so special, always remembering little details and giving me random surprise gifts. He seriously has never been this uptight before. The only thing he did was express concern over a few of my male friends, but I assured him they were gay, or they didn't have feelings for me and he let it go. Commenter 2. OP, this is classic controlling behavior. He is trying to isolate you from your family. I haven't read your other post yet, but it looks like they are inadvertently giving him the right tools to do so, from your friends and basically everything that would provide you a place of refuge and shelter if you ever have to leave him. This whole, I am older, so you must listen, would not fly even if he was 10 years older, but he is fucking 23. That is 4 years older than you, he still is a fucking immature child. Maybe not legally, but certainly from the way he acts. What are the rules for him? What are the sacrifices he makes? Right now all I can see is him trying to basically make all decisions for you and make him totally dependent on you, while he gives up nothing. NTA. And when you go back to the UK, politely tell him to fuck the hell off. Commenter 3. Op, you didn't cause him to be like this. It was already there and he latched onto the first mistake you made to show his true colors. He's using your guilt to manipulate you and control you and make it your fault. This was always what was going to happen. Nothing you did or didn't do was going to prevent it. You're 19, you just got done being a child who had to listen to their parents. This is the time for you to make your own decisions. Be independent and yet, do what you want, within reason OBVs. Don't stay in this relationship. It's not going to end well for you if he's already this controlling after 10 months. Update 2. Hey everyone, I wanted to update on my previous 2 posts. I received great advice from a lot of people and it immensely helped me try to evaluate our relationship. I texted my friends about the situation, and they also agreed he sounded overbearing. About an hour ago, I ended things for good. I texted him yesterday afternoon that I thought we should have a serious discussion about our relationship. He said we should wait until we have both cooled off from our conversations earlier, so I suggested tomorrow. He sent me his usual good night and I love you texts, which kinda broke me. His horrible behavior didn't erase 10 months of love that I feel for him, and it almost felt like betraying him saying the same things back when I knew what I was going to do in the morning. Here's kinda a summarized version of the call. It was over an hour so I condensed it as much as I could and I tried to write it as quickly as the call ended so I wouldn't forget. Anyways, when I called him, he seemed very normal and calm. We talked for 10 minutes just about how things were going and stuff. Then I basically told him that I didn't want to do this, but I thought it would be best if we broke up. I said that we probably expected different things from our partners, and I couldn't do what he wanted from me. After I said that, he sat in silence for like a minute. I thought the call had dropped, but then he said he was processing what I said. He asked me if this was revenge for what he said 2 days ago, and I said no, just a realization of incompatibility. He then said he wasn't going to change his mind on his boundaries, and me giving him an ultimatum was manipulative. I told him that this wasn't an ultimatum, it was going to happen. He then kept repeating, "What the fuck, my name?" and then told me I didn't mean it. He asked me if I loved him still, and I said yes, and then he said he knows I'll come back. I said this was it. He said something about how we need each other and went on a rant, but I don't remember that much of it because I was crying at that point. I cut him off at the end, and just said goodbye. He said he would never forgive me and I would never see him again since he was that awful, and then hung up. I immediately blocked his number, WhatsApp, Snapchat and Insta. I do not think he will have another way of contacting me. I do not think he will seek me out or anything, so I'm not too worried about that. My university accommodation also has front desk security and you can't get in without a keycard. Thanks again everyone. Edit. His mom just texted me saying she was sad things ended the way they did, but she wishes me all the best. Minor update. One of his friends tried adding me on Snapchat for some reason. Don't know if it's him using his friend's account, his friend wants to know what happened, or a coincidence he added me right when this unfolded. Relevant comments. Commenter 1, NTA, you did the right thing. When you get back, make sure to inform campus accommodations that this person is not allowed to contact you or visit you or anything. He also might try to see you in the buildings where you have your lectures, if those are accessible, or places where you shop or like to eat. For the next few weeks, see if you can mostly socialize in groups and with friends, avoid being alone. Oop. Thank you. Most of the buildings require an ID to get into. Commenter 2. NTA. Please be careful when you return to the UK. Get help to watch your back. He is not done and he does not accept this is over. He sees you as the dumb, immature, inexperienced girl he can mold and control the way he wants. No way will he give this up easily without fighting. Oop, thanks for your advice. I have talked to a lot of my friends in the UK and I am going to stay close to them for a while when I get back. Commenter 3. NTA. Setting boundaries and then actually enforcing them is an important life skill. My mom let her friend and his kids stay, giving them my room without asking. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay the bills at home and moving in with a friend? My mother and I share a modest but comfortable home. Since she and her husband split up a few years ago, it's just the two of us. To be honest, she suffered as a result of the nasty separation. Seeing her so broken at the moment was difficult, but she eventually started to get better. Even though it was difficult, I always stood by her side as she worked to improve her life. She deserves to be happy, after all. My mother informed me a few months ago that she had made a new friend, who we'll call Jake. It looked so innocent at first. She informed me that they began spending time together after meeting through common friends. It seemed pleasant to me. I was happy that my mom had someone to chat to and enjoy because she had gone through a lot. You know, she seemed lighter. As though she didn't have the same emotional weight as before. Jake seemed like a decent friend to me. I didn't want to pry, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. But as time went on, I saw that they were spending more and more time together. They spent time together, went out to dinner, and he even dropped by a couple of times when I wasn't home. Once more, I didn't give it much thought. I desired for my mother to live her life apart from the house and me. She is free to enjoy herself and go on. I didn't think twice when she told me one day that Jake needed a temporary somewhere to stay since his upstairs neighbors had flooded his flat. Why don't you let him stay? I said. Let's assist him. It seemed like a good idea. Then everything began. I thought Jake would arrive with just one guy and maybe a few suitcases, but he didn't show up. He and his 2 kids showed up at our door. 2 teenagers, ages 13 and 15, a girl and a boy. My mother never mentioned that he would have kids, much less that they would move in with us. Like a deer in headlights, I stood there staring at them. When Jake presented his children, they appeared to be kind enough, but my only thought was, where in hell are they going to sleep? We don't have a large house. The apartment has 2 bedrooms and a tiny kitchen and living area. That's all. My mother and I each have our own room. No guest room is available for use right now. I assumed my mom would have a plan. Perhaps Jake and his children would spend the night in the living room on couches or air mattresses. Naturally, it would be tight, but manageable for a little period of time. However, after showing them around the house, my mother said something that startled me. As if it were no great issue, she pointed to my room and stated, "You'll all be sleeping in her room." "Wait, what?" I said in awe. "My chamber? Every one of them? My privacy? My space? My bed?" I was totally taken aback. She didn't ask me at all. She didn't discuss it with me in advance. She failed to warn me. Nothing. She made the independent decision that I would let these strangers stay in my room. As Jake and his children thanked her and nodded as if everything were usual, I stood there in quiet, trying to take in what had just happened. I was screaming within at the same time. I was finally able to speak to my mother when they went to bring their baggage inside. "What do you mean they're sleeping in my room?" I asked her. "Where do I go?" She pretended it didn't matter. "It won't last long," she said. "You can sleep on the couch," as though it were the best course of action. I was enraged. She made this decision without even consulting me, and I told her that was unfair. "This is my home, and I'm just trying to help a friend in need," she stated dismissively. "When you're older, you'll comprehend." "When I'm older, will you comprehend? I'm not a kid." This was extremely unjust, and I'm old enough to recognize when I'm being treated unfairly. She was asking me to give up my place, my refuge, for an indeterminate amount of time, not just a minor sacrifice. She didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me beforehand. I was too ashamed to even look at Jake and his children when they returned. Even though they had done nothing wrong, I couldn't help but feel bitter. My room, my bed, my closet, everything was going to be taken over by them. As they settled, I tried to avoid them for the remainder of the day. While I sat on the couch, angry, my mom assisted them in moving their belongings into my room. That night, I slept on the couch, and it was awful. There wasn't enough space to spread out, and the cushions were rough. I barely slept at all and woke up with a tight neck. Although Jake's children are adorable, they still occupy a lot of room and are teenagers. They constantly use the restroom when I need it, are noisy, and leave their belongings all over the place. I feel as like I'm a visitor in my own house now, and my room no longer even looks like mine. Jake, too? Although he is courteous, he is too at ease for someone who is only meant to be here momentarily. He spends all of his time in the kitchen, cooking, watching TV, and generally behaving as though he owns the place. I've attempted to express my feelings to my mother, but she keeps ignoring me. She assures me that I need to learn more and that it's only temporary. She even had the audacity to accuse me of selfishness for whining when Jake and his children were having problems. However, I don't believe that wanting a little respect and care in my own house is selfish. Am I mistaken? I'm not sure how long I can put up with this. My mom seems to have forgotten about me entirely in her efforts to assist Jake. I know she wants to help him and cares about him, but at what price? Here, I feel like the victim. This is not just her home, and it used to be my home as well. I have no idea what that is now. Although Jake and his children moved here 3 days ago, it feels like weeks have passed. There was a sudden and overpowering change in the atmosphere of the house. It's difficult to describe, yet it no longer feels like home. Tiptoeing around strangers and avoiding getting in their way makes me feel like the visitor. Jake and his children, however, behave as though they had been here for ages. My mom seems quite content with the patterns they've established, routines that don't involve me. The most difficult night was the first one. As previously stated, I found myself sleeping on the couch because I had nowhere else to go. While I struggled to get by on a lumpy couch in the living room, Jake and his 2 children were well settled in my room, which I had spent years creating as my own. The unfairness of it kept coming to mind. I felt like a zombie by morning after tossing and turning all night. However, I reasoned that it was only transitory and that I would overcome it. Perhaps it won't be as horrible as I fear. It was terrible, to be honest. The house no longer felt at all like it was mine on the 3rd day. Jake's children were all over. As if they owned the house, they dispersed their belongings, shoes, backpacks, chargers, and miscellaneous snacks, all over it. Their juice bottles and cereal boxes littered the kitchen countertops. There was no space for my belongings because the bathroom shelves were piled high with their toiletries. And the roar, the noise, my God. There was no stillness anywhere because of their music, their chatting, and their incessant TV use. I'm a person who cherishes their personal space, so not having one was really annoying me. Jake was no better. He appeared totally comfortable, cooking in the kitchen, relaxing on the couch, and generally settling in. I once returned from a round of errands to find him seated on the couch where I usually sit, eating a sandwich as if he had lived there for years. Even though it was so minor, it truly annoyed me. I no longer even had the couch. In the meantime, my mother was behaving as though nothing was wrong. She was upbeat, talkative, and didn't appear to notice my discomfort. The fact that I was being forced to leave my own house seemed to go unnoticed by her. They also had pals over, which was the cherry on top. The third day was in the afternoon. When I got home from work feeling worn out and ready to pass out on the couch, I discovered that Jake and his children had brought some friends over. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them, adults and teenagers, all chatting, laughing, and munching in the living room. They would prepare a small feast consisting of Coke, snacks, dips, and even some alcoholic beverages. It appeared to be a small gathering. When I went in, nobody bothered to acknowledge me, and I didn't recognize a single face. Feeling alienated in my own house, I stood there for a minute before slipping into the kitchen in silence. That moment struck me more strongly than anything else, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps the awareness that I didn't belong in the house while they did was the cause. Or perhaps it was the fact that my mother was sitting there, laughing and talking to everyone as though nothing was wrong. I felt unnoticeable. That night, I returned to the couch, but I didn't get any sleep. I lay there looking up at the ceiling and wondering how this had happened. I decided the following morning that I could no longer remain there. I couldn't continue to feel alienated in my own house while sleeping on the couch with strangers around me. While Jake and his children were living with us, I was unable to get the solitude, space, and tranquility I required. I so made the decision to temporarily move in with my friend. I knew she wouldn't mind because I'd stayed at her apartment a few times previously and she was always friendly. My mom didn't appear angry when I told her about my idea. She hardly responded at all, in fact. That hurt more than I anticipated when she just answered, "Okay, if that's what you want." I'm not sure what I was expecting, perhaps some recognition that something wasn't right, that she knew why I was leaving, but I didn't get it. Just a okay, and a shrug. It felt unreal packing away my belongings. I only brought a few personal belongings, some clothes, and toiletries. However, I couldn't get rid of the sensation that I was being pushed out even after packing everything into my suitcase. I called this place home. After years of living there, I was going because my mother had chosen to put her buddy and his children above me. What could I do, even though it didn't feel fair? My friend and I had an amazing life together. I was able to breathe for the first time in days. I had a bed of my own, a place of my own, and most importantly, quiet. Being there was 1,000 times better than being at home, and my friend understood and encouraged me. The bills, however, arrived later. Typically, my mother and I split all household expenses, including groceries, internet, and utilities. I was okay with the fact that it was always a shared duty. However, I no longer reside there. I didn't use the internet, water, or electricity. I didn't consume the meal. I told my mother I wasn't going to pay half the expenses when she texted me to remind me of this. She reacted instantly. To put it mildly, she was taken aback. She was unable to comprehend my refusal to pay. For me, however, it was straightforward. Why should I pay for a home that I don't occupy? Since I had practically been kicked out of my own house, why should I pay my bills? She wasn't happy when I told her this. She accused me of being petty, ungrateful, and self-centered. She stated I should be more understanding because Jake and his kids were going through a tough time. But since she didn't understand me, how could I be understanding? I refused to back down. I promised her that I wouldn't pay a dime until Jake and his children left and I could go back home. I didn't care that she didn't like it. This time, I had to establish limits. I have to put myself first. I'm now staying with my friend while I try to decide what to do next. I feel horrible about leaving, but I also feel like I had no other option. My mother's willingness to ignore my feelings for someone else was demonstrated to me in this circumstance. I'm not sure how long Jake and his children want to stay, but I'm not going to return until things change. After I first refused to pay the bills, a couple more days went by. I began adjusting to living at my friend's house during the time. In all honesty, I felt more at ease in her tiny apartment than I had in my own home in weeks since she had been so patient about the whole thing. For folks I hardly knew, I wasn't being made to give up my comfort or my personal space. I was beginning to feel normal again, and it felt like a secure haven. My mother then texted me once more. It was time for me to pay my share, she said, bringing up the bills again. My stomach fell when I received her message. Even though I knew this was coming, I was still quite frustrated. She had made me feel like a stranger in the house, so how could she really expect me to pay for it when I wasn't living there? In an attempt to remain composed, I inhaled deeply before responding and informing her that I would not be making the payment. I reiterated to her that I no longer resided there. I told her that she had made the independent decision to put Jake and his children before me and that she had invited them into our house without my permission. I promised not to return as long as they were residing in the house. Sincerely, I was sick of saying the same thing over and over again, so I was strong this time. She couldn't ask me to pay for a living arrangement that excluded me, even if she wanted to live with them. I also suggested that since Jake and his children were taking up all the resources I was paying for, he might be able to help if she needed it with the bills. What did she say? He can't. It seems that Jake's apartment still needed to be fixed following the flood, and she claims that he was unable to assist with our household expenses while simultaneously covering the cost of the repairs. She also mentioned that Jake and his children would probably be remaining for a few more weeks, which completely shocked me. Weeks. Weeks of strangers occupying what used to feel like my haven, weeks of them taking over my room, and weeks of me sleeping on a couch if I ever returned made my heart sink. What I was reading was unbelievable. In addition to allowing Jake and his children to stay for a short time, my mother had totally changed the dynamics of our home to accommodate them. She was now telling me that I had to keep making payments for a house that I didn't even feel comfortable in. I was enraged. As quietly as possible, I informed her that I would not be contributing to the costs if such were the case. Rather, I would be giving money to my friend, the one who had truly provided me with a warm and secure home. Since I was now more of a visitor in my friend's house than a resident of mine, I informed her that I would be helping to pay her bills. My mother lost it at that point. She bombarded me with texts accusing me of being ungrateful and self-centered. She said that I was punishing her for attempting to assist a friend in need, that I was wrecking her life, and that I didn't want her to be happy. She kept talking about how difficult Jake's circumstances were, how he had nowhere else to go, and how I had to be more sympathetic. All I could think about, though, was how she hadn't showed me the same level of comprehension. She hadn't informed me that Jake's children would be arriving. She hadn't inquired about my consent to them occupying my room. She made her choice without even thinking about how it would impact me. Was she now accusing me of being self-centered? She seemed to have entirely ignored anything I had been attempting to communicate. It couldn't be further from the truth to say that I wasn't unhappy because I didn't want her to be happy. I wished for her to have friends, be happy, and advance in life. But her enjoyment wasn't the point of this. She didn't seem to understand how much it stung that she had put someone else's comfort, her own child's comfort, above mine. Naturally, I felt bad. I adore her, and she is my mother. However, her remarks resonated. She gave the impression that I was a terrible, cold-hearted person who didn't give a damn about her welfare. How could I not feel deceived, though? It was about the idea behind it, not only Jake and his children. She didn't even consider asking me how I felt about it. She is now upset with me for establishing limits and advocating for myself. I decided to put myself first and wasn't going to back down the more I understood that I couldn't allow her to make me pay for anything that didn't benefit me. My mom was free to decide whether or not to assist Jake, but she had to deal with the fallout, including the financial strain. Given that I had effectively been kicked out of my house, it wasn't my responsibility to support their living arrangements. I'm staying at a friend's house for the time being and concentrating on the things I can manage. I've been assisting her with household duties and expenses, and it feels good to be a part of a family that genuinely values me. Throughout all of this, my friend has been invaluable, and I'm not sure what I would have done without her. I'm still upset and hurt over my mom, but I'm attempting to give myself some space to think things through. I have stated that I would not return until Jake and his children have left, but I am unsure of how long they will be staying. It's a difficult position, and I feel conflicted about taking care of myself against wanting to help my mom. However, I have to prioritize my health in the end. I don't care if that makes me selfish. Right now, I'm not sure if our relationship will ever be the same, so I just hope my mom understands how her actions have affected me before it's too late. It has been a couple more days since I last spoke to my mother. I continued to remain at my friend's house in an effort to concentrate on my work and adjust to the fact that I would no longer be living at home. To be honest, it was an odd sensation. I felt more at ease and liberated than I had in weeks, on the one hand. However, there was resentment lurking in the back of my mind. Knowing that you have unresolved stress looming over you makes it difficult to completely unwind. I was still very wounded by the way things had turned out, even though I didn't want to acknowledge it. My mother had chosen someone else over me, and I had been expelled from my own house. There was no way I could simply let it go. My mother then texted me once more one day. Her tone was quite different this time. Unlike before, she wasn't demanding or irate, rather, she expressed regret. She said that she was sorry for the way things had gone and that she was unaware of how deeply her choices had wounded me. She said that things would be different if I came home. She even promised to make an effort to get me a room of my own so I wouldn't have to sleep on the couch any longer. It was unbelievable to me. Did she actually make this choice now? And why couldn't this be done earlier? It was like being slapped in the face once more. She was offering me an arrangement that was equally as humiliating as the last time, in addition to asking me to return to a setting where I was obviously not a priority. How was I expected to feel better after that? How could I think anything had changed at all? When she revealed that she was struggling to pay the bills without my help, things became worse. I was truly pushed over the edge by this part. Was I meant to feel sorry now? I'm the bad guy now that everything has happened because I didn't pay for a house that I didn't even reside in? I didn't abandon her without warning. I repeatedly assured her that while Jake and his children were there, I would not be helping with household expenses. However, she attempted to use guilt to get me to return rather than dealing with the underlying issue. Her apology didn't appear sincere. It was about money, not about repairing things or repairing our relationship. And to tell the truth, that only made me more irate. I could feel my irritation boiling over as I read her message again. She obviously still didn't get why I had gone in the first place. She did express regret for the incident, but she refused to accept accountability for the choices that led to it. She refused to admit how much her behavior had wounded me. She only appeared interested in getting me back so I could resume paying the rent. I declined. While Jake and his children were still there, I informed her that I would not be returning. Furthermore, even after they went, I wasn't sure if I wanted to return. There was a breach of trust. I no longer felt the same sense of security and acceptance in that place. As I gave it more thinking, I came to the conclusion that perhaps it was time for me to move on. At that point, the thought of renting my own house started to cross my thoughts. Even though I wasn't rich, I had a reliable job and, with careful budgeting, I could afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. It would be mine, even though it would be tight. My own place, where I wouldn't feel out of place or have to answer to anyone. It was both thrilling and terrible to consider. Since I had never lived entirely alone before, the thought of making such a drastic change felt intimidating. However, it appeared to be the only practical remedy at the moment. I was unable to constantly switch between my mom's and my friends' homes. My friend was really supportive when I shared this concept with her. I could stay with her as long as I needed to, she said, and I should take my time. I felt like I was holding her back, even though her kindness meant the world to me. Although she would never admit it, I didn't want to cause her any trouble. I couldn't constantly invade her personal space because she had a life of her own. I therefore began searching for apartments. Finding something that appeared like a good fit didn't take long. It was a modest one-room apartment close to where I worked. Although it wasn't very noteworthy, it was tidy, reasonably priced, and most importantly, mine. I went to see it for myself, and I knew right away that this was the place I wanted to be. The thought of having a place of my own, a place where I might at last feel at home again, was liberating. A few days later, I signed the lease and began gradually relocating my belongings. I am incredibly grateful to my friend for all of her assistance during this process. She has always been my pillar of support, and I will always remember how she came through for me in my hour of need. In the meantime, I received a text from my mother requesting that I return. Her messages were a mix of desperation, anger, and apology. She continuously talked about how difficult life was without me, how much she missed me, and how she wished to put things right. However, the night Jake and his children arrived was the only thing on my mind whenever I received her texts. She invited them to sleep in my room without even asking. I reflected on how she had disregarded my feelings when I expressed my discomfort to her. I recalled how, when I made the decision to go, she accused me of being self-centered. I choose to ignore her. I might as well disregard her now since she disregarded me when I most needed her. I did it to protect myself, not out of resentment. I couldn't return to a place where other people's wants and feelings would constantly take precedence over mine. I had to make a decision. As I write this, I'm sitting in my new apartment, trying to take it all in. Anger, grief, and relief have all been mixed together, but mostly I just feel liberated. I feel like I have control over my life for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure how my connection with my mother will develop in the future, but for now, I need time to recover and consider my options. Am I being self-centered by not going back to put myself first? Although I doubt it, some individuals might answer yes. Setting limits and being selfish, in my opinion, are two different things. In light of everything that transpired, I am not sorry for my decision.